This is The Gorge. It's a podcast where my friend Sarah and some other people gorge themselves on overanalyzing a topic.
The Gorge is brought to you by Patreon. That's patreon.com/thegorge, where for just $5 a month, you gain access to not one, but two podcasts. $5 gets you, that's not right.
No.
$5 does not get you that. $5
Well, it does.
$5 gets you Takeout, a monthly commentary track where Ben and I decide we don't feel like doing any work and we're just going to talk over something else instead. And $2, I'm going through this very quickly because we have a lot of podcasts to do. $2 gets you That's Hell You're Walking Into. It's a series where Ben asks me questions about Fate Stay Night, Fate Grand Order, and the extended Nasuverse, and I do my damnedest to answer it, often with hilariously wrong results. If you think that sounds like fun, head over to patreon.com/thegorge. Kick in however much you can. From $2 to $10 to $50. Please don't give us $50. That's the scam tier. We appreciate you. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you to Robin the Bun, Rodsters, Palm of Power, Jaspy Dorada, Steel Condor, Nihar Bot, Red Lantern Reviews, Holy Star 64, Neon Hellcat, Patrick Perez, Roddy 1/2, Saturn, Alice Marks, Shia, Magus Jack, Liam Lane, and that other one dude.
Great. Ben, we have guests.
We
Guests.
do.
Introduce yourself, starting with Oats, because I think we started with Saturn last time. So, Oats, introduce yourself.
Hi everybody, it's Oats. I am the third character introduced and therefore the most powerful. You can find me on Twitter, basically wherever you can find Sarah, because I'm usually replying to her.
Yeah! Saturn, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Saturn, they, them pronouns. You can find me on Twitter, Tumblr, and Cohorse. Oh my god, the drinks are coming in early. At cohost.org at The Future Rules, all three of those social media platforms. I'm the fourth character introduced, which means I may or may not be an alien and also heroically sacrifice myself to solve the problem.
Saturn is the extra ranger that gets a slightly different transformation sequence.
Yeah, I'm the one that's like, oh, they're so cool. We're gonna sell a bunch of toys off of them, and also only have them in like 5 episodes until before they die.
That's correct.
Also, I don't want to let it go unstated because Saturn just said it, and I don't want this joke to go unsaid. But when Goofy appears on Donald's podcast, he's the co-host.
Gorge.
I'm the co-host.
Continuing the Power Rangers analogy, Ben is the one who dropkick explodes people into stone quarries. If I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Hey, you saw the episode title. We're talking about Endwalker. More
of it, because we left off on a huge cliffhanger.
Where did we... Oh, we left off with the world ending. That's right.
Yeah.
We got through Vanaspati and like kind of resolving that situation, and then we're like, we're gonna go back to Radzat Han, figure out what the fuck is happening.
And so how are we going to how do we do this? Okay,
I think the way we did it last time worked really well.
Okay.
With Saturn just kind of narrating, and then we interrupt them to talk about stuff.
Hey, please interrupt me aggressively.
Okay.
Because we did move through the last one pretty fast, so and I think it would be a good idea, like maybe at the end of this one, if we have any like lingering thoughts about Endwalker, just like completely go into them. But
sure.
This is also the part where, admittedly, this is like the half level section of Endwalker where my memory is a little fuzzy.
I do remember this part pretty well, honestly.
Okay, you take over for this part.
Okay, so like they're in Vanaspati. Well, they finished up with Vanaspati, and everybody is like, "Well, damn, that's a bummer," and everyone else is like, "Yeah, bummer, dude." So what do we do? And at one point, one of them is just like, "Well, we should think about it this way. Let's figure out what's going on where." And try our best to like solve the situation locally, and that opens up the role quests, which will go like, hey, go over there if you're this class, and go over there if you're that role. I don't care. But as you're doing that,
go to Ishgard if you're a caster and you want to hang out with the whitest, most boring man alive.
I think it's funny that the role quests are basically assembling a suicide squad of people you've never met before.
Much like Shadowbringers, which I don't remember how much we got into that with that, but much like with the Shadowbringers role quests, the Endwalker ones are really a mixed bag, and weirdly the healer one is just like miles above all the other ones in terms of quality.
Significantly better than all of the other ones, possibly combined. All of the other ones are extremely weak, except
You
for...
hang out with Fordola and you get some really good thematic resonance with the main plot.
Yeah.
And this is compared to, say, the tank one, where you hang out with Connie Senna and you wish you were dead.
I hate the tank one so much.
It's so bad.
It's wretched.
But anyway, we go through all of that, and if you choose to, you can go do those role quests and make yourself miserable for most of them. I highly recommend at some point picking up the healer for both Shadowbringers and for Endwalker.
They're both extremely good.
It's a good ride.
Sage starts at level 70 and it's very fun and easy to play. Do it, please.
Do it. It's so worth it. But so they get all through that, and you're kind of sitting there afterwards, having been told you can do these role quests and help people out in certain areas, and you're like, well, the cosmology means that we probably should be checking on the first, right? What is going on over there? And so you go over there in the hopes that you might have an answer to what's going on, and it turns out the first doesn't even register that anything's going on, because it is affecting specifically just the source, which raises a lot of questions that we never get answered.
Right.
But you also go there going well, while I'm here, I should just kind of ask questions and see what's going on, and maybe somebody else has answers. And then you go, well, wait, Elidibus is kind of technically still alive. Maybe I can ask him questions about this flower that I had that disappeared when the final days happened.
Let me go wrench Elidibus's immortal soul from the afterlife to ask him questions.
Well,
No,
even crystal, even worse.
Even worse, he's trapped in time prison in Crystal Hell Zone, and he's being slowly drip fed into the afterlife like cold brew.
I do remember now though that the locus that makes us go to the first is that we realized that the little magic flower our mood flower that we were giving that wilted was that it got its name all the way back during the time of the ancients, because I think Heidelin mentions it or something. And it's okay, well, we'll go ask Elidibus.
Well, no, it's actually so you find you find it and you're like, oh, this is some sort of weird mood flower. That's crazy. And it's the keeper, the watcher on the moon, who's oh, I don't know what the fuck that is. And it's because Heidelin directed us to us or whatever through Kryl. And the keeper's I don't know what that is, but back in my time we used to call that the flower of Elpis or whatever. And you're
right.
Oh, okay, I don't know what an Elpis is, but I guess we'll untangle that in a couple levels.
We'll go ask Elidibus, and then that's what we do. We go back to the first and we ask Elidibus. And then Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker takes possibly the craziest turn of any video game I've ever played in my life, right?
Mm-hmm. Where Elidibus, who's trapped in the Crystal Time Prison, is well, the Crystal Time Prison is a time machine, as established. And that little cat boy who you hang out with did manage to use it to create the only recorded time loop in which you went back and actually changed the past instead of it just being self-fulfilling. So, maybe there's some shit we can pull off here. I'm going to try to shoot you 12,000 years into the past. So you can go figure out in person, by the way, please don't be seen. Realize that you can't unfuck the situation here or this entire world is fucked. So just try to ghost it if you can.
You're on a fact-finding mission.
Yeah, Elidibus grabs you by the face and says, do not touch anything. Do not ask anyone any questions. Do not make eye contact with a single individual. You will be invisible and silent and intangible for the entire duration of your journey. I cannot stress how much you will be completely undetectable on this journey.
And anyways, in the first room of the new area, you immediately make contact with Emmett Selk and his boyfriend, Hythlodaeus.
You make contact with possibly the worst two possible people you could make first contact with based on your history with these characters.
And then Emmett Selk goes, there's some kind of strange little ghost there. Let me blow it up to normal size so I can talk with it.
Ghost is too small. Need to fix it back to its big size.
Before we get too far along, I do want to stress this is one of my favorite parts is getting to revisit the people in the first, because once again, Ishikawa couldn't resist the opportunity to make you forget that you can ask your beautiful pixie friend for help.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, Feoul. We just.
Feoul, who also
forget.
points you in the right direction, too, for that matter.
I'm sorry, Feoul. Listen.
Feoul is basically an honorary scion, except that she's stuck in the fur. Same with Rain.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just, and the thing is, like, the problem is that you hang out with Urianger so much, who Urianger, much like Elidibus, is like, don't ask the fairies for anything, ever. And then Feoul's like, you can ask me for anything at all times, no strings attached. And you're like, but really, no strings attached? No, really, no strings attached. But you never listen.
It's the Warrior of Light is just not used to having someone who helps them and is competent at helping them.
Yeah.
Yes.
The problem is, the Warrior of Light is genre savvy enough to go, like, I got maybe 3 favors before she tries to put a ring on it and start calling me Oberon. So I need to, like, really think carefully about how I'm using these.
Warrior of Light's like, I've dealt with genies before. I know there's always a catch.
Haven't you done Feoul, have you ever done a treasure map? And Feoul's like, what? No. I mean, I know what they are, because the Shadowbringers treasure maps happen in Fairyland, but, like, you know. The point is
that we return to the past, and they'd send us to a fucking Chrono Trigger level, because Elpis turns out to be the Kingdom of Zeal.
it's literally just...
Oh yeah, you fucking hear corridors of time immediately as you step out of the room.
Instantly, yeah.
It's just like, oh, okay, because it's like it's floating islands with a bunch of people, an entire civilization of dorks in robes.
Yeah.
And it's
From
like,
Was
12,000 years ago. Not 12
Yeah.
million, but 12,000. So it, like, effectively is the same thing.
well, antiquity is 12,000 BC.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
It is
It does
explicitly
pan out,
a Chrono Trigger reference, almost certainly.
Yeah.
The fact that, I mean, maybe I didn't talk to any NPC in that. Maybe there is one who references dreaming they're a bowling ball, thinking they're a bowling ball, dreaming they're a plate of sashimi.
Oh, I'm
Maybe. Probably.
I
need to do more. I want to do more of the NP. The problem is that, like, side note, there's, like, you can do so, like, you know how you can't do side quests in Amarot and Shadowbringers because it's, like, thematically appropriate because it's, like, a ghost city, literally.
Uh-huh.
Well, there are side quests in Elpis, and you're like, oh, cool, I'll do some of these for, like, more insight into the ancients. And most of them are, will you please go collect these bear asses? And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Or
But
like,
they're
hey, I made,
fast bear asses.
or like, I made this new kind of animal that sucks. Will you help me kill it?
Yeah, will you go kill it for me? And it's like, okay, there's obviously the like if you do your ether current quests, there's quests that like there's like 2 quest chains that are okay, and I did those, and those are fine. It's about making the behemoth.
Mm.
And it's very funny because it's mostly about like you named the behemoth in the past, and also kind of accidentally made it as dangerous as it is now. Whoops.
Oh no, you're telling me there's a self-fulfilling time loop in Elpis? I hope this doesn't come back to bite us on
Shut up! Don't worry about it!
Oh no!
So, we get to hang out with Emmett Selk and his boyfriend. You know, it's fine. You get to find out that you were part of a polycule in a past life. Probably with the most beautiful man you've ever seen in your entire life. And the scrungliest, grouchiest motherfucker you've ever met. He's just always been that way, as it turns out.
I think my favorite thing about Emmett Selk in the past is that he takes the hood off, and my immediate thought is it's Xemnas.
Yeah.
He just looks like Xemnas.
It's the same design.
Absolutely. I swear, I honestly think that like half the reason we did this time travel bullshit is so they can sneak in more references to other Square Enix stuff just to have a lark, just for a lark.
Just for a lark, yeah, absolutely.
It's so funny how often that kind of thing crops up in this area. Like, I guess we'll get to it in a minute, but like, I cannot remember the name of the series. Anyway, So we're in Elpis now, and Emmett is like, okay, so what are you doing here? And you say, I don't know. And he's like, what's your name? I don't know. And Hythlodaeus is like, why do you look like Azim? And you're like, Azim who? I have no recollection of who the 14th member of the convocation is.
Azim, I hardly knows him.
And you can't. It's bad enough because again, Elidibus was very, very specific. Like, don't talk to anybody. But now here we are talking to everybody, wearing the robes, running around, and they're like, "Are you going to tell us anything?" And you're like, "No, not.
I don't know anything. Are you sure? Yeah.
No, I don't know nothing."
I'm obviously a brain dead little like creation because I have bunny ears. I'm not a real people. Don't worry about
Look, just because I look like Azem, sound like Azem, have the color of Azem's soul, and am suspiciously here to hang out with you and get along with you pretty well, you shouldn't read any further into that than you already have, or we're gonna start having some fucking problems.
My name is Mr. Meza, and I'm from somewhere far away.
It's so you're telling me your name is Guy Incognito?
That's a terrible name. What mother would name their child that?
Oh no, that is something Azem would name a familiar.
The only read I get on Azem from Endwalker is that, like, you could say, like, yeah, I am Azem's familiar, and they go, well, Azem never told us that they had a familiar, and then they go, no, that actually makes sense that Azem would just forget that they have a familiar running around. You know?
You seem weirdly forgetful, just like Azem does. Do you also have chronic brain damage like Azem does?
Do you also reimagine people as sexier for some reason?
While staring at Hythlodaeus and Emet-Selch going, no!
What I do in the privacy of my own brain prism is none of your business, Hades.
Oh, God. But we're here to find Hermes, a.k.a. Fandaniel, before he was that.
Fandaniel.
Yeah.
Before he fucked up royally.
So it turns out you go off on this whirlwind adventure to meet this guy named Hermes, and it turns out Hermes is a guy with brain problems.
Oh, we can talk for a long time. We can talk for a really long time about Hermes, and we might have to.
This is one of the unique things, kind of like with we talked about last time, where it's like you can't actually restrain the player character, so you have to give them free reign, and where the Garleans are like, no, don't put a shock collar on the Warrior of Light, they'll just snap it off by flexing. They have to put you in a weird sort of like almost theme park element of Elpis, where like you can see other player characters running around and you just have to pretend that they're also familiars.
Yeah.
And that you are the only one here.
Yeah.
Because they can't afford to drop you into an instance like at the beginning of Shadowbringers. Because there's a lot of shit to do here.
This is way too big, yeah. So you just kind of have to roll with it. It's fine. But yeah, no, I think Hermes is... We could probably talk for a long time about Hermes. Hermes is extremely interesting because Hermes is a guy who has like actual clinical depression in a world where that just doesn't exist. Except it does, but nobody acknowledges that it exists, right? Like
most people don't get sad enough to acknowledge that depression is real.
Yeah, exactly. And like Hermes is like a for real guy who's got like actual brain problems, right? Who can't feel happiness the same way that everybody around him can feel happiness, and he doesn't know why, and it's giving him an existential crisis because nobody around him can relate to how he's feeling. And it's like, oh, okay, so maybe this wasn't like total paradise the way obviously Emet-Selch sold it, because Emet-Selch is, well, he's Emet-Selch, right? And like, I don't know, there's something like it's very interesting because it's not like a thing you really even, you know, at the time considered. You do kind of just take him for his word that like, yes, the ancient world was a bureaucratic nightmare, but for the most part, everybody was doing pretty okay. And there are like a couple of suggestions of like, maybe not. See all of Anamnesis. Oh, fucking God.
Anamnesis Aniter.
Thank you. The two in Niter dungeons are both like, hey, what if things are a lot shadier than you realize? And it's like, oh, okay. But like Hermes is the first real time you actually get to see that like it's not as easy as just, well, everybody was happy all of the time and all of our problems were solved, because it was, well, people are so like everybody is so content that they can't even begin to like empathize with what Hermes is feeling.
There's a complacency in their system such that like it's so difficult to deviate outside of that norm that for that to happen is kind of unthinkable to everybody around him, so they actually can't relate because they don't realize that he's in any way fundamentally different from them.
Right. Yeah. And that becomes a big thing much later at the end of this expansion with the last part of the last dungeon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like where it's explicitly about like what happens to a civilization that just completely eliminates all feelings of sadness at all, right? And yeah, I don't know. I think Hermes is, we meet Hermes and he's the Warrior of Light's the only person who can actively empathize with what's going on in his head, because like they are from a world where suffering is just kind of the norm, and for them they're like, yeah, dude, life is hard. Yeah, I get it.
Hermes just much like at the end of Shadowbringers, where Emmett Selk was like, could a depressed person make this, and then shows you Amarant. Hermes is like, could a depressed person makes this, and he shows you his daughter.
Yeah.
Oh, Leon.
So to explain really quickly, he's flanked by this adorable little familiar who it turns out is technically not a familiar. It is, I believe the phrase is an entelechy.
Yeah.
She's not made out of ether like everybody else is, but out of a concept known as dynamis, which, tying back into much earlier, was basically like an emotional, like, it's basically like the Force,
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's based heavily off of like emotions as opposed to like matter, because apparently those are like two different things, like two different forms of energy. I don't know.
It's the two different types of magic that are in the Nasuverse. There's mana, and there's prana, and one is significantly smaller, like it exists in smaller quantities than the other. Actually, I kept thinking, okay, there's two things. One, she's called an entelechy, and Ben knows that word because entelecheia is a thing from Tales of Vesperia.
Yes.
It is also a Greek philosophical concept.
Yes, but also it's from Tales of Vesperia.
And that's like where I heard it. But also too in Razat Han, they call Dynamis like Nidana, our cool elephant alchemist lady who rules, explained that there is a type of emotion-powered magic, to simplify it down, they call it Akasha, right? Which is a way cooler term than Dynamis, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And Akasha, alongside like the two different types of, it's a reference to the Akashic records, which is also a thing that is referenced heavily in the Nasuverse. Anyways, I'm continuing my running theory that Natsuko Ishikawa has read a whole lot of Fate Stay Night, along with things that happened at the very end of this expansion.
Also, if I'm not mistaken, though, Akasha is actually like a Hindu term.
Yeah, it's also a Hindu term.
Like specifically relating to like, or if it's not Hindu, it's Buddhist, but it's like, I think it's relating to like the impurities in life that cause one to, stray from the path, as it were.
Yeah, but it's all these things kind of coming together that makes me like, But
Natsuko Ishikawa almost certainly is a Fako player. I can promise you that.
Yeah,
I am positive of that.
She is all, yeah, and if she got her, then we can expect plot developments in the next several patches to be positive. But if not, she's going to kill someone. Orion J's head is on the block if Miss Ashikawa does not get Castoria.
Yeah.
Prithee, please buy Ishikawa-san some Saint Quartz.
Natsuko Ishikawa went broke rolling for Oberon over in JP, and that's why she is the way she is, and maybe why Emmett Selk is the way he is. Actually, no, those timelines don't line up. Don't worry about it.
Sorry, they don't.
Don't actually. Lost Belt 6 came out like a couple of months before Endwalker. I don't know. Maybe she made adjustments.
Look, the only reason Emmett Selk is in near reincarnation is because Fate Go still doesn't have a cross-brand promo.
Those cowards.
Yeah.
So she knows that she's never going to get Emmett Selk into Fate Go, unfortunately.
Aw, man.
Oh.
Yeah.
That made myself
Breaking my
sad.
heart to have all of us just, aw.
Anyway, Final Fantasy XIV.
Oh, no.
Right,
This is
right.
Anyways, hey, you know today is the anniversry of Fate Go, so we've all got that on the brain?
Yeah, and Final Fantasy XIV is offline, so we're not
Yeah.
thinking about it, despite this being the FF14 Gorge.
Great.
But no, Medion is made out of Dynamis. Carry on, Oats.
Yeah, so sweet little Medion is this most adorable little bird child who very clearly is neurodivergent and adorable in a cinnamon roll.
We love an
she-
autistic baby. You just got the sweetest little heart.
We know for a fact that if she were to make it deep enough into the series alive, she'd end up being a scion almost instantly.
Mm-hmm. I
She's one of
think
those
with
kind of
her,
characters.
and I think with her, I don't think the thing is that she's made out of Dynamis. I think the thing is that she is made of very thin ether.
Mhm.
Like, she's incredibly sparse, which is the thing that allows her to be so affected by Dynamis, which
That's
is
right.
a thing that we'll get to. And this is also important because if you remember, the people of the Source and also the Shards are much thinner in their ether than the people of the old world because they are sundered, and so they have lesser ether in them.
Mhm.
This is a surprise tool that will help us later.
Yes.
That will
There's
come up
a-
much later.
There's a couple of different interesting things that get brought up a couple of different times throughout it. That this part that hint at a couple of other like weird and wild things about Dynamis and how Akasha has probably been here this entire time, and we just now only just now have a word for a couple of concepts that crop up in a lot of different places, such as like the bard and the dancer job quests and etc. And so we're going through this like incredibly lengthy dissertation from Hermes and his little like bird daughter, and he explains that like, well, the thing is that like this one is kind of like the control subject, because I've made like a bunch of these, and I created all of these beautiful sapient creatures that are very overly sensitive to emotions as space drones. No reason. I just wanted to see what was out there, if there's like life on Earth or something, and like I figured if I were to send one out there and it'll come back safe and sound, perfectly emotionally healthy. And
Well, I actually think we're jumping ahead a little bit.
We are a little bit.
Because this is we are, because
Right.
he introduced us to Medion, and this is so basically the reason that we meet Hades and Hythlodaeus here is because they're trying to basically source him to get on the 14th, because the person who held the seat of Fandaniel before him has returned to the star, which is the Ascians are effectively immortal, and so their way of dying is that when they have decided that they are done doing things on this earth, they simply just go die. And return to the life stream, as it were. And obviously, and why we get into this whole depression side quest anyway is because, or not side quest, like side bit anyway, is because Hermes feels very conflicted about this, because he is someone who knew the prior Fandaniel and thought he was I forget if they were gendered specifically, but thought they were a brilliant person who had so much more they could have done, and is very conflicted about their death. Which is weird for the Ascians, who don't really see it as anything to write home about. It's just something that you do when you're done being alive. And so after we have this sort of like heart-to-heart with him, we kind of rejoin with Hermes and Hythlodaeus, because they're like, okay, we get it. You need some time to think about it. We're still here anyway, so we're gonna like help you out around Elpis and like check out how things are going and like get an idea of the kind of things you're working on, right?
Mhm.
And so they go have a fun bit where they help a lizard learn how to fly because it was
very cute.
Yeah, Hades has to transform after being bullied by his two boyfriends. And I think what we wind up getting to is moving to another one of the islands of Elpis as we're kind of like working our way towards. I forget. I think this is that we were looking. I forget. Is it that they wanted to go to Catesius Hyperborea for something, or because we have to move on from like the main area to meet,
right?
But I don't remember if meeting them was intentional or not.
I believe the actual reason was they were going up there because the nearby Catesius was Hermes' home. So they were going there basically like for a spot of tea while he was doing something.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because they're not going to Catesius for like dire reasons just yet. They're just going to Catesius to like meet with Hermes there.
Right, and so on the way there, Hythlodaeus is telling us about sharks. Because it's one of the most popular concepts for fish. Everyone's always trying to invent new kinds of shark.
Everyone in Elpis loves street sharks so much.
And he is, while he is giving us this lecture, there is a street shark has spotted him. He's coming over for a twink snack.
For an awesome time.
He's gonna eat some Twinkies, as it were. And before our beautiful boy can be manhandled by this giant street shark, it is obliterated from orbit by a new face that we have actually seen before on the boat ride to Charlian. And this is where we meet the former Azam, Vina.
And so it's like we're doing, and so again, Endwalker continues to be the wherever you think this is going, no you don't expansion, because we're as we established in the last episode, we beat Zodiark as the first trial, and now we are just hanging out with the ancients, no big deal, which is a thing I was convinced was never going to happen. You're hanging out with Emmett Selk in particular, who is like your weird Sundare friend, right? Like, who says like, I don't like you at all, Baka, and you're hanging out with his extremely cool and lovable boyfriend, who is just explicitly in love with him and Azem. It rules. You have, before you go to Catesi, or before you meet Vina, Hythlodaeus has this whole long conversation, we'll get to that conversation, about how like his entire existence is just to assure that her, or Hades and Azem just get to do everything they want to do in life, right? Like, he's like, that's the whole reason I'm alive. And it's like, oh, okay. Wow, that's just romance. That's just romance.
Hades and Hythlodaeus are bokeh and Tsukome, obviously. Vina is seemingly perfect at first glance. And Azem is my way through helplessness.
That's correct. We've done it, folks.
Well, wrap it up. That's dumb. Endwalker's over.
Anyway, so in the vein of things happening that you're not expecting, Vina drops in, and internally you're just sweating like, oh fuck, it's Mom. It's Crystal Mom. Hi, Mom. Hi. I didn't call you Mom. Hi. And she just looks at you like, why do you have my magic on you? Are you from the future? And you're like, what makes you say that? And she's like, well, you have my magic on you, and I don't remember putting it on you, which means you must be from the future.
It just feels like a cartoon thing, where the whole time the Warrior of Light's just been sweating in the background because minute one, they blew the plan.
Yeah.
Like, it's like extended Disco Elysium side plot.
Olympus had one instruction for you, dumbass. Yeah. Don't interact. Well, 2 instructions. 1, don't interact with anyone. Fuck that up. 2, if you do interact with anyone, don't tell them you're from the fucking future.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So Vinat shows up like, hey, it's Lieutenant King Kitsuragi. Did you take the body out of the tree? And Azem's just like, there's a body in the tree. And so they're like, okay, hold up. We need to like go like hunker down because you're clearly hiding things from us. As Hades like, hey, I don't like this, that you're this little freak who looks like the person who I'm in a polycule with, and also you're maybe from the future and keeping secrets of me, so let's go hash this out. And against your better judgment, you're like, all right, you three, I'm going to give you a Gorge right now about the entire plot of Final Fantasy XIV and its award-winning expansions, Heaven's Word, Stormblood, and Shadowbringers. And Hypnodeus and Venat goes, well, that sounds crazy. And Hades like, I hate this. My character sounds fake. You're just fucking with me. You prick.
It's not clear exactly how much the Warrior of Light tells them.
I want to believe it's explicit detail.
I want to believe it starts with, so I was on a carriage, and there was these two little Ellison twins who were sitting there with me.
So what's an Ellison? Oh god, okay, we have to work backwards.
So well, again, here's the thing: we're dealing with Ascians whose like time frame is extreme. It would be completely reasonable for them to be like, no, we want the play-by-play in excruciating detail, please.
and then at one point, Venat goes, "Hey, did your impersonations for everyone change?" Yeah, don't worry about that.
Look, I'll be real.
Everybody got an accent. Don't worry about it.
She's like, I was just like, I've been doing this for about 6 hours now, and I've got the hang of the accent I'm trying to convey a little better. I am, in fact, the only person in this entire setting who speaks with an American accent. What's America? Don't worry about it. That one. We're gonna leave that one. We're gonna leave that one alone for now.
Happy 4th of July, everyone.
And you went to this praetorium how many times? Look, I have to do it like once a week so that I can give this book to a little girl, and I get big prizes for doing it.
Look, the thing with the book is that I have 9 stickers, and I need to get them in 3 lines so I get a big prize. Well, can't you just put the stickers anywhere? No.
No,
they're randomly signed. Well, how does that happen? She does it. I don't know how. It's some kind of insane magic that I cannot comprehend. And yes, I can, in fact, replace the stickers after I've already put them there. The mechanics of this are beyond me.
We do know,
but I thought that class sucked. No, we got to rebalance after this expansion. You see, after I defeated Xenos, some of the classes got readjusted.
Now they're good.
And Hades like, oh, so you also play Dark Knight? I see. I'm familiar with taste. How rare.
Oh god.
We do know that enough detail has been given that like Hades is livid about everything that goes down when it talks about him because you give as much context as possible, and he's still like, I want to know what happened in those 11,000 years that are unaccounted for. That would make me act in such a stupid fucking way.
And that's like, listen, buddy, I don't got that information for you.
And that's the wonderful thing, too. And, like, we'll get to this a little bit later, but, like, in Shadowbringers, he's like, yeah, we're all tempered. It fucking rules. I would choose it any day. And Hades like, I don't get it. This version of me sounds like he's acting completely different. That's crazy.
He sounds like an irrational asshole.
And then,
sounds like he's trying to kill himself.
Well,
and then
are you telling me I'm clinically depressed also? I just learned about this depressed thing today.
The warrior, like, I can't even comprehend what would have happened that would put me in this state. And the Warrior of Light's like, apocalypse happened. Remember at the very beginning of the story?
Remember the apocalypse? Okay, so we do tell them about the apocalypse.
What if there was an apocalypse, and also there was about 8 of them, and every time you did them, you made, like, you had to watch, like, little bits of everyone you ever knew and love die over and over again? You know, never mind. We'll get back to this later, Hades.
Hades, remember how I named the first chapter of this narrative A Realm Reborn? Do you think that might have something to do with your mood?
Oh, God.
Oh, fuck.
Anyway,
it's all fucked.
Yeah, and so the 3 of them are like, well, that's crazy, but since you told us that our world is going to end, we have to take steps to prevent the end of our world. And immediately the Warrior of Light's like, uh-oh. I just realizing I've broken the Prime Directive.
Uh-oh.
This is potentially a bad thing, but
This
hey,
is gonna be so mad at me.
I got this far by just going with the flow. So let's see where they're going with this.
No, Sarah, the Warrior of Light's like, Elidibus will be so mad at me. But wait, if I change the future so Elidibus doesn't exist, he won't be mad at me.
I have to change the future.
There's a Tumblr post that's a very old classic, but it's very literally describing the scene where like a parent walks into a room and they see their dog sitting at a clay potter's wheel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you spin a clay pot on, and they're like, and they notice that it's not clay on the pot wheel, but it is in fact my baby, and the dog is shaping the cartilage of my baby's head into some sort of shape. And then it ends. It may be a classic example of bad parenting, but let's see where the dog's going with that. And this is basically the Warrior of Light's approach to any situation they've ever been put in.
Yeah.
It's just the bit from The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror where Homer gets sent back in time and he loops so many times he just gets pissed off and starts smashing things.
And the thing is, listen, we are playing Final Fantasy XIV, the Endwalker, where we killed Zodiark at level 81, and we are now hanging out in the world unsundered. And after a certain point, you're like, well, I don't know, maybe I am going to change the future. Maybe I'm going to go back from fucking Elpis, and everything's going to be fine because I did a bunch of shit here. I don't know.
Maybe we're going to retcon all of existence. I don't know. Let's find out. And Hades like, okay, don't get so big for your britches. We still have to figure out what's going on with this whole Fandaniel situation. And they're like, you know what? You're right. We need to snoop around because clearly, Hermes, Mr. Hermes, is up to some shit and is very depressed and made a suspicious little bird child. Mm-hmm. And we need to figure out what's going on with that.
Sure. Because we did tell Hades, Hith, and Vana that, like, yeah, the Fandaniel that you are trying to recruit right now is responsible for the end of the world, so we do have to go talk to him about his future crime.
He became the heart of Zodiark and tried to kill me, and it was real bad, and he did it specifically to kill everyone, so clearly he's wrapped up in this somehow. And you're like, okay. We need to find out more about this bird. I heard a rumor from someone, they saw him have a bunch of birds, and so we need to go...
a ton of birds.
We need to go hang out with that. We need to go figure out what that lady saw.
By the way, this is a small thing, but I thought about it more and I really like it. So you don't realize kind of how the ancients saw time until you kind of go through this quest, because one of the people who was like, yeah, I saw Hades with a bunch of birds and he was sending them all out to the sky and it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. She doesn't really give a good frame of reference of time, but because of something we learn very soon, you realize that for her it was super recent, but for us it was probably a couple of decades ago, right?
If not more. It could have easily been hundreds or thousands.
Mm-hmm.
And she's talking about it, and she doesn't give specifics. She's just like, well, one night I was out here, and I saw Hermes out on this little island that gives you a great view of the sky, and he was with a bunch of these birds. It was so beautiful. And it just stuck with me forever. And you're like, okay, well, that was probably a little while ago. And then you learn the thing, and you're like, oh, that was probably hundreds of years ago. Oh, okay.
Actually, it occurs to me, and I'll get to it in a little bit, but it occurs to me I think it actually could be several thousand years. And we'll get to that. Because, we find out about this, and we're like, okay, we're gonna go, figure out what the fuck is up with him and his little bird child. And so we try to, confront him about it. And it's at some point around here, okay, we find him, and we find his little bird child, and the little bird child is having some inexplicable nervous breakdown, and teleporting / disappearing / doing Ju-on the Grudge visual effects, which is concerning, because there aren't a whole lot of Ju-on the Grudge visual effects happening in FF14 traditionally. And you're like, well, okay, this bird girl might have some problems. So you chase her down. Emmett Selk is helping you. You get to have Hades in your party, which is a delight it's just wonderful. I like that it's there.
It's so much fun because you do one of those little sequences. So Endwalker is packed to the tits with sequences of like people following you around a zone, and Elpis is no exception. So, but like the person who's following you around is like Emmett Selk, like that one. That Emmett Selk is like running around and arguing with you about not wanting to get his robes wet and stuff.
Yeah, because he's grousing while you make him run through puddles. Like, come on, Emmett.
There's more important that we're literally trying to like prevent the apocalypse, my guy. But he has, like we said, always been this way. And it's great. It's another one of those just like little things of just like, oh, we're just doing this. Okay, we're just gonna hang out with the extremely tragic figure who we feel terrible for at the end of Shadowbringers because of how fucking doomed he is. And now you get to hang out with him post facto his being doomed, and it's just like you look at him and it's like, oh buddy, I really, really wish I could help you.
Poor man.
Oh god.
So after making him trounce through water for a bit, eventually you're able to kind of corner the girl who's having a nervous breakdown of some kind. And this is where like Hades steps back in and he's like, oh, you found me. And you're like, Hades, what the fuck is going on with your daughter? And he's like, well, as you know, because you've been asking around, I have like 40 daughters, and I sent most of them except for this one out to space to go like, because I wanted them to go explore the universe, and I wanted them to like ask questions of people there. And Hades like, hold on, what is the hypothesis that you're trying to answer here? And he's like, well, I wanted them to find out about the meaning of life. And Hades like, oh, you fucking stupid asshole.
You stupid fucking This is why
you made this daughter. You made this perfect little angel, and you said, I'm going to make the purpose of your life to get anxiety.
And this is the part of the game that gets really, really real.
This is also why you peer review your experiments, Hermes. You live in a society of nerds. The entire purpose of peer review is to go, I am going to do this experiment. And then your peers go, you fucking moron, you're about to give a bunch of birds anxiety. And then you don't do the experiment.
Yeah, and so what happens is that she's connected to all of her sisters throughout the cosmos, and all of them report back about encountering basically ruined societies, empty wastelands, and societies that have destroyed themselves over and over and over and over and over and over again with seemingly no hope.
The report coming back with 2 words: shit's fucked.
That's right. Everybody knows shit's fucked. And this is a problem for this little collective hive mind of extremely sensitive autistic teen bird girls because they all get violently suicidally depressed at the same time, and it multiplies on each other. And she starts going rip shit. And Hades like, well, no, it's fine. I need to find out what I need to find the answer. I need to know the answer to the universe. Don't worry about my daughter's mental breakdown. And Hades is like, no, give me that bird. We have to put her out of her misery now.
We need to unfuck this immediately.
We need to unfuck this buddy.
And now the Warrior of Light is piecing things together and going, oh, this is how it happened.
It's bad. But
yeah,
also, did you ever think that your Final Fantasy XIV was going to talk about the Fermi paradox?
No.
Because I didn't.
There's other things I didn't think FF14 was going to talk about, which we'll get to in a level or two, I think. So at this point, Hermes like, no, I'm taking my daughter and leaving. You can't catch me. And then he runs to Catesius Hyperborea with his daughter in tow, and he's turned into a big spooky magic creature in his true form. He got naked for everyone to see. And so we're like, okay. Hades like, okay, try not to get screechingly euphoric about this prospect, but I am going to go trust with you for a dungeon. And Warrior of Light just goes, yeah, baby!
And then you do a dungeon with Emmett Selk, Hythlodaeus, and Vina, and I remember we were having this conversation. It was like, it was that everybody kept telling me it's the 87 dungeon. Everybody was saying you have to do the 87 dungeon as a trust, and I was like, well, okay, I'll do the 87 dungeon as a trust, but like, why? I don't get it. And then like as I am physically moving my character to Catesius Hyperborea, I just get on Discord and I'm like, is what about to happen what I think is about to happen?
Yeah.
I think if I recall correctly, it was either yours or Ben's experience of this, where you were rolling up to 87, just like, well, I guess I'll do 87 as a trust, but like, who am I trusting with?
That was me. That was me.
Yeah,
like,
that was
who am I
Sarah.
trusting with? Because I'm in. Oh fuck.
Anyways, Emmett Selk is a dark knight. It
You're fucking right. He is.
fucking whips.
And he hates taking the stairs, so he will use plunge to get down them.
It's so good.
Also, very funnily, this is a dungeon, and they get tons of unique mechanics. Like, Hythlodaeus has a unique class. He is a DPS class that is, I believe he is called a Soul Seer. No idea what his deal is supposed to be. But, like, literally one of the things is, like, it's basically impossible to accidentally get them killed unless you deliberately try and fuck with their pathfinding, because they will just teleport out of the way
It's
of
incredible.
every single mechanic in the game, and also they all perpetually have stone skin up.
It's great.
It's amazing. Meanwhile,
great
I'm constantly
because-
getting owned by mechanics left and right, and it's like, can I have some stone skin, please?
My other favorite thing that I absolutely adore is if you decide to be a tank, what ends up happening instead is dear sweet Emmett Selk decides to be a black mage instead. But he doesn't use his staff. He just snaps his fucking fingers because he can't be bothered to do anything else.
I love
Yeah.
him.
Which also, I like the idea. It's like, what's just like Hades just going during the earlier recap. It's like, slow down. Hold on 1 second. What in the blue hell is a cast time?
You people have to live that way?
You have to
Cast
wait?
time? Ugh.
That's it. Why he's convinced that you're making shit up to fuck with him. He's like, you've just described a reality that is specifically built from the ground up to annoy me.
What the fuck is a cooldown?
So you go through Catesius Hyperborea, where you see the fruits of Elpus's labor collectively, and then you fight Hermes, and he tries to get you, but thankfully the three of you are very coordinated and have talents, and you're able to basically overcome him.
Side note to interrupt. Love Catesius Hyperborea's whole design. Love that as you go further in the dungeon, it's just like, yeah, our offices are floating platforms. Like, there are bookshelves and desks and, like, places that people are obviously doing research, but, like, they're just platforms in the sky. There's no, like, walls or anything like that, but there's still research materials and stuff laying around. I don't know why. I just think that's a really cool...
It's a really fun aesthetic.
Yeah, it's a fun aesthetic and it's a cool world building detail. Like, of course, yeah, these people don't really worry about the kind of height based horrors that you and I might worry about.
Yeah, they can all fly. What do they care?
Yeah, okay.
They explicitly have the Warrior of Light power where they fall 10,000 feet. She's like, oof, I'm at 1 HP.
Oh, well, I see now.
Let me breathe this one out for like 10 seconds. Sidebar here, brief detour from the plot. Later in Trusts, if you take your actual normal people for the Trust, which say like your Scions, there's a very funny thing with the first boss where it does a mechanic where it hides underground and there's like a bunch of holes around. You have to follow its footsteps to find out which hole it buried down.
Yeah.
Alice does not know how to do this mechanic and mostly spends the entire mechanic pouting and or doing untargeted AoEs until she then jumps to someone who does know how to do the mechanic, which is extremely funny.
I love
Alpha-
that they bothered to program personality, and it's so incredibly clear if you do a trust with Alphino and Alice.
It's so good. If you have Alphino with you, he uses rescue, so she just keeps doing it the entire time.
It's so funny.
That's incredible.
I love that Alice steals the limit break.
Every time.
And she doesn't know mechanics, but she loves to rush it anyway.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's great.
So
good.
you, at the end of this, you've overcome Hermes, and he's on the back foot. And earlier in this, he mentioned, because, like, Hermes is a sensitive soul, and normally for Ascians, when an experiment of theirs fails, you return things to the star, which is that you kill them.
Yeah.
And he, obviously, being someone with depression in a society that has never known sadness in his life, has some moral compunctions about, like, just snuffing out life like it's no big deal. And so at a certain point during his tenure over Elpis, he developed a machine which he calls Kairos, which is voiced by Fortuno also, by the way, a fun fact.
We'll be using those assets, baby.
And Kairos is designed to, instead of returning something to the star, to wipe its memories. And Hades like, that's suspect. I hope it doesn't come up later. Oh no! Fast forward to the end of Catesis Hyperborea, where he's like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna wipe everyone's memories, and you won't know that my daughter went to go end the world, and neither will I. So we're just gonna have to see if we can make it out of this. We're gonna have to see if Asianity can pass the test of a depressed bird girl from outer space trying to microwave our planet to death. And Hades like, no you fucking don't. And they do a fun feint to get both the Warrior of Light and Vina out of there. What happens then is that the machine goes off, and Hermes, Hades, and Hythlodaeus have their memories of the entire events of your stay in Elpis wiped.
And then
the Warrior of Light lands and goes, oh, that's how it happened.
And then you give every single person who does the 87 dungeon just an existential crisis, right?
Yep.
You just end up laying. I just remember turning the game, because you have like a little bit of a conversation with Vina afterwards, and Vina is like, well, I'm going to do everything I can to prevent the end of the world.
Vina's like, well, clearly this is in fact a self-fulfilling time loop like normal, and so you need to go back to your time with this knowledge that you have. I'm going to go prepare to become Crystal Mom.
Right. And it's like, I just remember shutting off the game and just laying in bed and just staring at the ceiling, just going like, fuck.
Because it was not here, but it was shortly after that I had to take a break.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's just like, I don't know. There's something. It's just so. It is the tragedy of it. It is legitimately just toward the end of it, like this grouchy fuck likes you a lot, and he even says the line like, "Hey, this is like my legacy that I'm leaving with you," which is direct parallel to what Emmett Selk says toward the end of Shadowbringers, where he's like, "You're not worthy of our legacy." So it's like, oh, okay, oh fuck. And it's just like, it's just the tragedy of it all, you know, where you realize that this was a doomed endeavor from the start, and you know, after like the beauty of the writing of Endwalker, despite some of my reservations about certain parts of it, is that like, you really do, after a certain point, think like, oh, we're gonna fix this. Like, we're gonna retcon the apocalypse somehow.
And then you were violently reminded, no, in fact you can't, because neither you or anyone you love or the world that you care about would exist if you did.
Right, but you start to entertain the idea of like, well, what if I go back and like things are similar but different and better somehow? I don't know. Like, that's what I was starting to think, right?
What if you Back to the Future it?
Well, but this is the thing, is that, and this is like sort of what I think FF14 is getting at here, and like one of the rare examples of FF14 having a kind of clear ideological statement about something, which is, it's like, no, it has to be this way because the world of the Asians is a fundamentally fucked place because no one has any value of life or death.
Yeah, it is ultimately like a very broken society, and again, that'll come up in a little while. But you still kind of catch yourself like hoping to some degree, and it is actually very funny. It makes me think of what's going on with the Final Fantasy VII remake, right? Which is currently like dangling the thread over our heads that maybe Aerith won't die, right?
Maybe this is some crazy alternate timeline thing, etc., etc.
You start like really, and that's what the 7 remake is kind of doing right now, and so it's also what happens in 14. You really start finding yourself kind of subconsciously thinking like, this is a lot of stuff that is happening. What do you mean? Like, how could they possibly forget this? Or in my head, I'm thinking like, he can't pretend he doesn't know me, because he very obviously doesn't know me in Shadowbringers, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. And you just start thinking and hoping and trying to come up with an explanation. And it's not that like Kairos isn't established. Kairos is established multiple times at the beginning, and like it is set up and payoff. Like, it's not that Kairos is just an ass pull to justify Hades not, remembering you. It's established, and the audience is reminded of it. It does like your standard script writing setup and payoff shit, and you still just go like, when it happens, you just go, oh. That's how it's gonna happen.
There's also additional setup and payoff for it as well. A really minor event that we kind of glossed over because it doesn't really come up for the most part is at some point you do get to meet Louisoix's like companion, like his best buddy and like a professor colleague of his.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Who goes through explanations on how damage to the soul can affect memory and vice versa.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And that sort of that is there to, once you get to Kairos, kind of explain no wonder Fandaniel is the way he is.
Mm-hmm.
He implies that he has used Kairos on himself multiple times to try and forget his depression.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Also, it explains, again, like right before we came into Elpis, when we were talking with the time prison ghosts of Elidibus, when he was like, yeah, so you'd go here, and but wait,
why do I know that? Yeah.
Why do I know that you were there? That's strange. And it's, again, the thing you can piece together is that, like, as he is finally, with the last of his power, returning fully to the life stream, and this is something that, again, Mr. Professor clarified, the return to the life stream purifies that, like, bleaching, basically.
Mhm.
Like, you can remember the truth of what you were and what happened to you as you finally return completely to the star, as it were.
Right.
And Elidibus here, returning to the star, is like, wait, I remember you there, you should have been there, which also, like, and, like, this is not addressed further, which is strange to me, and might come up later in maybe in other raid content or whatever, but implies that Elidibus was there.
Well,
Yeah.
Elidibus knows you were on Elpis because of Pandemonium. That's where you meet Elidibus in, like, that's where the Pandemonium raid, begins.
Right, because
they
that is not explicit yet, but it is there is implication that the person that you meet for that raid series is in fact Elidibus.
And also, you did do a lot of running around in Elpis. So even if Elidibus didn't, interact with you, he still could have just seen you bouncing around, fighting things, and
Right.
hanging out with Medion and stuff.
Right, yeah. Or
Yeah.
heard that, like, Azem's familiar was bebopping around on Elpis, right?
Because he doesn't say, like, oh, I remember talking to you, or I remember interacting with you. He says, oh, I remember seeing you, actually.
Well, I was gonna say, but then also one of the things is, and again, this is like technically post content, but it's fine because it's still the Elpis time frame, so you can talk about it here. But that NPC that you meet at the beginning of the Pandemonium raid series, Themis, is very strongly implied to be the person who becomes Elidibus.
Yeah, I think it's
I believe they have the same voice actor. Yeah. It has a unique design that you usually only get if you're important, et cetera, et cetera. So it's one of the things like, oh, okay, so you can, even very early on with that raid series, you can kind of tie that back together. It's like, oh, well, Elidibus remembers me, even though I never met Elidibus here, because I meet Elidibus here instead.
Yeah, it's at the same place, just at a different time. And it's a very, I hate referencing Doctor Who because of what it became, but there's something very similar going on in Doctor Who, back when Doctor Who was good, with the Doctor and River Song, where they are, like, they know each other, but they are moving in opposite directions in their timeline.
Yeah.
When the Doctor meets River, when the Doctor, as we know him, meets River, it's at the end of her life. Spoilers for a 10-year-old show, I guess, but whatever. If you haven't watched Silence in the Library, sorry, that's your own fault. But he meets River at the end of her life. And then as he goes on through the show, he keeps meeting River, but she's younger and younger. Versus, like, for River, she keeps meeting this Doctor as he gets older and older, right? So their timelines are going in opposite directions. And that's literally what's going on with, like, you and all of these ancients. And I don't know. There's something really, like, like the melancholy there is so like intense.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just like you are meeting these people and you're making friends with them, and no matter what you do, you're just like, oh, they're just doomed. They're just doomed no matter what I do, right?
It is a kind of ships in the night melancholy that can only exist in this specific frame narrative.
New bespoke forms of sadness in Final Fantasy XIV.
I believe I don't remember if I mentioned this in the episode or if it's something the phraseology I used to you while you were going through it. Natsuko Ishikawa was in the suffering labs inventing new kinds of heartbreak for you to experience.
Correct. It's a type of hauntology, right? Like hauntology is an idea that is often expressed with when we're talking about the fallen USSR, and comes up a lot. Is a concept that is explored in depth in Disco Elysium, the greatest game ever made, which is nostalgia for a future that never happened.
Mm-hmm.
And that is an emotion that Final Fantasy XIV is kind of really, really pulling on nearly constantly. Is the concept of hauntology. It's a melancholy for a life you could have lived, but because of the circumstances of the reality you live in now, could never happen. But you can visualize it perfectly, and that's what causes the melancholy. And yeah, that's a thing that's really being touched on like hardcore with all of the ancient stuff. Is this idea of a future you could have had, and like these friendships you could have had, but of course, when you do eventually meet them at the end of their lives, you don't know them because that's in your past, right? It's their future, but it's your past, and that's what causes like the big existential crisis. At least for me, I mean, you know, there are other stuff that happens later with the Na that causes existential crises in other people.
Well, yeah, because also all of this is couched in and surrounded by there is no meaning in life. You are going to die. Nothing you do matters. Everything will crumble and turn to ash.
Yeah, absolutely. That's literally what you're kind of
quoted Medion 12,000 BC to now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like what's going on with Medion in particular, is that she is understanding that like everything is going to end and she's having a hard time coming to terms with it, right?
It's a combination of both the nihilist, there is no meaning in life, and the Fermi's paradox of there was never any meaning in life anywhere, and by the time that you find any evidence that anyone else ever existed, it's already long gone,
right,
or on the way out.
And of course, Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker is asking, well, how do you deal with that?
How do you, stroking my chin as I articulate a theme, how do you deal with the horrible crushing pressure of just existing day to day, knowing that at some point, and it could be a point close or far, a point that you expect or you don't, but at some point you will die, and you may or may not leave the mark that you wanted to leave at all.
Right.
Also, in the context of the game, if you think about that too hard, you will turn into a monster.
And then and then your soul will burn away, so you don't go to heaven when you die.
Again, Final Fantasy XIV's relationship with people with depression is a little. We'll talk about that in a Patreon episode.
That is why I had to articulate when one of the worldview opinions it had was clear and concise, and you could see where it was coming from.
I will. It is very funny. In between this episode and the last episode, I had like a little, because I was like, well, you know, at the time it's a raising of the stakes thing, right?
Right.
And then in between this episode and the previous episode, I had a thing that clicked in my head, and I went, never mind. I think this sucks. I actually think this sucks ass. But don't worry about it.
Vanaspati in general, or the part where the people don't go to heaven when they die?
The part where people don't go to heaven. That's specific. Where if you're depressed enough, you don't get to go to heaven. It's like,
I always knew that one.
I'm planning to go to hell anyway, but it is so. After we leave that very depressing scene behind and realize that the future, in fact, refused to change.
Right.
So we to go talk to our friends, like, hey, so I got back from the past. Like, oh, you were only gone like 15 minutes, and like, trust me, it was a while. Anyway, there's a depressed bird in outer space who's trying to microwave our planet.
Before we do that, though, because on our way back from the past, we gotta talk about the thing with Vana.
We gotta play the shitty games that suck ass.
Yeah, well, you know what? I was gonna say at the start of this, Elidibus, he's gonna send you back to the past to have a shitty time that sucks ass. By the end of it, that's the thesis statement for Elpis.
That is, you think you're having a fun time until you're suddenly not having a fun time at all. But we also see kind of like you go back to the past, you go back to the future, and we get to see like this extended sequence of like how Vana ends up the way she does. And like, I will say Final Fantasy XIV's writing of female characters is not that stellar. You either die or you don't get to be relevant, or you're Y'shtola, who is good.
Yeah, that's basically it. You got Y'shtola and you got Alice, and if you're a girl otherwise, watch out.
Get fucked. Unless you're Vana, who rules. Vana is like one of my favorite characters in this goddamn game, despite the fact that like what she does is it is unequivocally bad, but you know, much like Emmett Selk, when you do like a bad thing, you really don't have a choice. Things suddenly get like really complicated.
You do it for what you think are the right reasons and hope it works out.
You just gotta do what you can, man. You know,
every Ascian sucks, and that is the important thing to remember about the Ascians in general, is that by the end of the day, they all suck.
They all suck, but
Hythlodaeus is the only Ascian who's not remarkable for having a really bad idea and in like just ingratiating every other person alive to it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, Hythlodaeus is dating Hades.
Yeah, but, you know, that's
He's an enabler.
That's a laissez-faire thing. You can blame him for having the power to stop him, but like, when has Hythlodaeus stopped anything?
That's correct.
Except for stopped working in the middle of the day to take a siesta, as is his God-given right.
King.
Anyway, like, I think one of my favorite, like, there's something really messed up about how Vana is doing all of this effectively. Like, she knows that she is stuck in a time loop. She's aware of it. She can't do anything about the action she has to cause.
Right.
But you can see that she still wants to try and find another way.
Yeah, I mean, she's still actively trying to. We know from like stuff that happens in Shadowbringers that she's actively trying to, like, find another way and still convince people. Like, truly, it all does boil down to if the Ascians who were left after the end of the world had just been able to deal with the fact that the world ended and they're still alive in the aftermath, like, and that, yeah, people died and that sucks, but you still have to move on from that. Like, if she had just been able to convince them that you just kind of have to move on, you can't, all these new people that exist, all these new creatures that exist because of Zodiark, like, you can't just sacrifice those people to bring your dead friends back, right?
Right.
Like, if those people had just been able to accept it and move on and keep going, which is like the whole point of Endwalker, then yeah, you literally could have rewritten the past. But it's a foregone conclusion, right? Like, she knows by talking to you that she can't change these people's minds. They are doggedly determined to, like, kill even more of themselves and other life forms in order to bring back all of the people who were sacrificed to create Zodiark, right?
Which is, again, like, the thing illustrating how hopeless it's all been from the beginning. Like, no, if we simply sacrifice more of ourselves, eventually everyone can come back to life.
You can, as it's a thing that we talked about a lot in private conversations after I was done with Shadowbringers, you can go back home again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can totally go back home again.
You can totally go back home again.
And the passage of time and the changes that have been made to all elements involved are all reversible because time actually flows both forward and backwards. So you just have to choose what point in time you want to be in.
Yeah, and everything will be totally fine. We can ignore all of the horrible things that have happened to us. We'll bring all of our dead friends back, and we'll pretend that whole messy final days never happened. What do you mean? That would just make things worse and make us turn into monsters even worse. I'm sure.
Oops, we broke the 13th. Oh well.
Oh, fuck.
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
Whoops.
Oh no, you're telling me it's been a doomed enterprise from the start? Well, let's just keep going. Maybe we'll figure it out.
Maybe we'll figure
can
it
go
out
back home
eventually.
again.
the lesson here is to double down.
Just double down. I'm sure it's fine.
Always double down on your reactionary politics that kill new people. Wait a minute.
Oh,
Why did he hit on a 21?
God.
Oh god. Oh god. It's all what I'm saying is it's all horrible, and that entire sequence with the like the whole, mankind will walk is some of the best just like moments.
It's fucking cool.
It's fucking the best. It's so good.
I too love the boss's speech in Metal Gear Solid 3.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's right. Vanai is basically the boss of Final Fantasy XIV, and I love her for it.
What will you choose, Azem? Loyalty to me or loyalty to the Scions?
It rules.
So anyway, we go back to the future, and I'm going to paraphrase a bit here because I think this there's a bit of the stretch that isn't as important as the rest of it, and I apologize for getting details wrong. Effectively, you go back like, hey guys, I have some news from the past. I'm like, that's great. We have to go to Garlemald mold right now because shit's blowing up. Please inform us on the way. And we're like, oh, well, fine. Oh, fucking. And then, so you go there, and Oriange's back, and he brought his bunnies with him, and he's like, hey, what's up? I heard you had a scene where you had to choose a romantic interest, and I really had to be gone for that. Anyway, I'm back now. I know when I said I was going to be on the moon, you thought maybe I was going to stay there, and that was going to be where I was leaving the story. No, I just had to get out for not being there for the romance scene that you had. So anyway, what's up? And you're like, well, I went to the past, and it turns out there's a goth bird in space of depression who's trying to microwave the planet. And he's like, that's fucked up. We have to fight some monsters here. Also, hi, Xenos.
Hey, Xenos.
Xenos is like, hey, can we fight now? And you're like, I'm busy.
And he's like, that's what you said last time. It's like you don't even love me anymore.
It's
Xenos
like
is like,
explicitly got divorced on the moon. Were you not paying attention?
Xenos is like, I almost think you don't want to fight me at all.
I do no, Xenos.
That's how you know.
Want to fight you, but like,
That's how you know Final Fantasy XIV is the opposite game of Super Mario Odyssey. Because in one of those games you get married on the moon, and the other one you get divorced on the moon.
That's Saturn, you're correct. Super Mario Odyssey is the thematic opposite of Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker. Because you do in fact want to fight Bowser. And the part where you steal Bowser's body is really, really cool.
Yeah, instead of sucking ass. Xenos
wishes he and the Warrior of Light had Mario and Bowser's relationship.
oh god.
Yeah, because it's defined by settling for each other after the woman they're both interested in gives up on them.
He looks at those two and he sees they have been at it for 30 years and he's like, I want that.
God, I wish that were.
Xenos does the Tom and Jerry monologue at the beginning of Deadly Premonition.
Oh god. Oh, God.
You see, I consider myself Tom in this scenario, and I see you as something of a Jerry.
Now I'm just thinking of Xenos like watching Sylvester and Tweety, Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner, and just like, I want that. Oh, I would give anything to be that.
Xenos, the biggest Looney Tunes fan in all of Eorzea.
Oh my god.
Xenos just watching Elmer Fudd and Yosemite Sam like, I understand you.
A rivalry for the ages.
Oh my god.
I am crying.
Oh my
Fucking
god.
flop.
Okay.
And so, one more thing from that scene before we continue is that Jewel shows up. That's his name? Euless. I call him Jewel, like the vapes. Anyway, so Jewel shows up and he's like, "Hey, Xenos, you fucking traitor scum! What's your fucking problem? You just love killing, don't you?" And Xenos has the most baller response of all time, which is like, "Would it make you happier if I had a reason?" If you believe that, you may as well fucking be an animal, you stupid prick.
It whips because we've just gotten back from Elpis at this point, right? And it's like all of Elpis is about like, hey, isn't it kind of sad that like Vina and Hades both had to do a bunch of fucked up stuff, and to you know, for noble and good-hearted reasons, right? And then Xenos is like, fuck you, a bunch of people are still dead. Who gives a shit about noble and good-hearted reasons? Like, who cares? It doesn't, like, Xenos is also responsible for a bunch of people being still dead, but it, like, he's the only character in Final Fantasy XIV who is honest about it, who's just like, yeah, I killed a bunch of people, so what?
Medion is the nihilism image, just all black. It just goes, nothing in life matters. And Xenos is the one where it's like the kid on the skateboard with the colorful sunglasses, like, nothing in life matters.
Yeah.
But he's holding a bloodied katana.
That's correct.
Yeah, and there are dozens of bodies strewed around.
Yeah,
that's correct.
But he's still wearing cool sunglasses.
Yeah.
It whips because it's just like it's a reminder that's like, yeah, a bunch of horrible stuff happened for various tragic reasons, but like Emet did kill a bunch of people. Like,
yeah,
he killed the most people.
Probably the most people who's ever killed anybody ever.
He still did all the Shadowbringers.
Yeah.
Well,
he did do a Shadowbringers.
You would have to devise an existential nightmare in order to kill half the amount of people that Emmett Selk has killed.
Right.
He's killed basically the entire population of this planet about 8 times.
That's correct.
And meanwhile, Xenos Viator Galvus, our man Armello, or smooth kind of fellow, to quote a different podcast. Mm-hmm. He's like, I found a productive way to cope with my depression, and the Warrior Flight's like, that's not productive, and Xenos says you.
Bye.
It's working for me. So actually, are we gonna fight?
Actually, no. We're talking about this now. We're gonna talk more about it in the Patreon episode. But the best part of Endwalker, now that I am 2 drinks in, is the part where Alice essentially says, fuck you, asshole, fall off your horse. Yeah. And Xenos goes, actually, I don't want to fall off my horse. I think that sucks ass. And that'll come up later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so after we put down Situation Carlo Mold, we're like, okay, this shit's normal.
So
how do we deal with a brute? Oh, you can continue.
I just want to say real quick, there is one mercy that Endwalker pulls on us, and I'm very grateful for it. Which is that the blasphemies just disappear for the rest of the plot.
They basically become irrelevant because they kind of assume that you're just going to deal with it in the role quest.
Yeah, they're in the role quest.
Like,
yeah.
It's a great mercy on Endwalker's part with everything else that's going on that, like, you don't have to confront these things anymore. You got enough going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And beautifully, the role quests are not that well written except for the one. So you really don't have to have too much of an existential crisis in the role quest.
Because you can just skip them cutscenes when you realize they're not going anywhere.
Yeah, unless it's a healer quest, in which case you should watch that one, because it should probably be MSQ content, but I know they can't do that. Mm-hmm. So anyway, what happens to Scions after they get the whole Garlemald situation under control is like, okay, so an evil bird in space who wants to microwave the planet with her depression lasers.
That's correct.
That's a problem. Because space is very far away. And, like, we've been to the moon, but space is ostensibly farther than the moon. I don't know how to get there. Can we, like, fly the moon away, maybe? Like, just get away from a theorist? And, like, that's a possibility. Let's talk with the Charlians about it. The Charlians are like, look, we've been working with these bunnies, and we got an idea. We could probably fly most of the people away on the moon. The Warrior Light goes, hold on, what do you mean by probably and most here? These are load-bearing words.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, obviously the problem is we have to finish our spaceship, which we're close to help us finish our spaceship. But like, we have to go finish our spaceship, and then we can start ferrying people to the moon.
Right.
And we can get them on the moon and go away. And like, we're just like, well, that's not really a tenable solution, because obviously we have all these shards left. And they're like, what's a shard? And I'm like, don't worry about it. A shard's kind of like another planet that exists at the same time and place as our planet, and there's people on those ones too. And they don't know that the apocalypse is happening.
Right.
And also, if the apocalypse happens, they're fucked, and they don't even get the luxury of fighting back or being able to do anything about it.
Because they can't go to space. The explicit thing about the shards is that like space isn't really like a thing for the shards. They kind of exist like on a hey Saturn, you're in Lost Belts now. They exist in a bubble on the fabric of reality.
Yeah, they are effectively a superimposition on like the actual planet, which is the source. And so you're like, well,
Thancred's got like a daughter in one of those.
Yeah. and eventually what you agree is like, it would be kind of our... We had this whole point as the DLC started, like before it started, that if you don't save one, if you don't save someone, you can't save. It's not wisdom, it's indolence, right? Something like that, a quote like that. And you're like, well, if we said this to bully Alphino and Alisae's dad, we kind of have to stick with it, right? And like, that is more than one person. That is like still 7 entire planets worth of people that we would be abandoning for our own sake.
And also, it's kind of implied, just by when you're talking with the Sharlians, that like, there really aren't a lot of plans to save like the dragons or a lot of the beast tribes.
Or probably a lot of the countries that aren't like conveniently located.
Yeah.
And you're like,
they don't have anything. They have no plans for Marasidia. Nobody's even touched the New World. They haven't even like made contact with them yet.
Yeah, so it's just like, we're just going to be abandoning like several billion people to a pretty wretched fate.
And
that's
then
not very heroic.
Yeah, no, and so you have the idea of like, well, okay, clearly if we can, what would be preferable is to instead go to space, wherever that is, and fight the sad Gothbird. And they're like, well, how do you plan to do that? And they're like, well, you have a fucking spaceship, don't you?
You have a spaceship!
You have a fucking spaceship, don't you? And I'm like, yeah, we were going to use that for the moon. And they're like, fuck the moon. We're going to space. They're like, no, we're a spaceship! No, man!
And eventually, we convince the Sharlians. We have a fantastic scene where it turns out actually Fortuno Leveilleur is actually a pretty good dad. Sorry. I'm sorry. He's actually a pretty good dad. I actually kind of like him. I think one of the best scenes in it.
I understand. I agree.
He loves his wife and his children. He's just terrible at expressing it in a gentle way.
One of the best scenes in the game is when he's talking about like how overcome with emotion he was when his newborn children held him by his thumb with their little tiny ears. Like, oh, okay, fine. I guess you're good.
Much like China's, he's just, I love my curvy wife.
It's really good. You're just fine, you're a good dad. God damn it.
He just, like, the minute those kids are born, he just went, shit, this plan's gotta go.
Oh, fuck.
And we also have a heart-wrenching scene where Urianger finally runs into Munbrida's parents.
Because he's been avoiding them this whole DLC because he just doesn't want to talk to his dead girlfriend's parents about his dead girlfriend because he thinks they're gonna hate him, which is like, reasonable fear.
Yeah, and they're like, no, we love you, you're like our son-in-law, and he's like,
and then you just start crying like really, really hard for like 35 minutes.
Yeah.
And this was it.
Minimum.
This was it. This is where I went, I can't play this anymore. I gotta go.
Yeah,
I don't like this anymore. I'm not having fun.
And had to take a break for a little bit, understandably, because the plot was like, hey, we're gonna deal with like a bunch of like both the threat of the looming apocalypse and dying and going to hell, and also like mourning everyone that we've lost, and the idea this might all still shake out to be not worth it. And it's like, it's a stressful time, and it's like stressful in a way that even Shadowbringers wasn't.
Right.
You know?
But like some of those moments are just Mind you, there's also a lot of fucking around in this part that just makes you want to tear all of your hair out at the same time.
It's really boring.
You shoved in like 6 hours of filler for no good goddamn reason.
There's a lot of go talk to some people and check in on them and get supplies from point A to point B.
Interact with a Lalafell who's like an Overwatch character because he's like a one-note joke.
Yeah.
And importantly, I guess the crux here is that the Charlians are like, okay, we're cool with your plan to take our spaceship that we've been working on for hundreds of years and just do a completely different thing with it instead of like, doing the thing we plan to do with it. But Mom needs to say it's okay. And they're like, well, how the fuck do we ask Mom? And they're like, glad you asked. We have a machine that lets us go to the afterworld to talk with Mom. And they're like, when were you planning to spring this on us, you fucks?
And then the Charlian's like, listen, secrets are like our whole thing. Do you want to go on the elevator to the afterlife or not? It's like, God damn it, I guess I do, but we're having a conversation about this afterwards.
Like, obviously I want to go to heaven and talk to Mom. Like, obviously.
I need to have that one last conversation with her.
And then you do a really cool dungeon that kicks ass.
Level 89, the Itioscope.
The dungeon that nobody knows how to pronounce. Is it Itea?
It is Itioscope because it's Greek.
Ah, thank you.
And specifically, Itea is in reference to a like Aristotelian concept of like something that is like, it's, I guess the best way to translate it would be like the answer, but it's answer in a very general and like abstract way. And it's because it's called the Itioscope because you're using it to talk to God effectively.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and so you go to here and you're like, well, great, we're in the live stream. They just shot us into the live stream and we're going to go find Heidelin and talk to her. And you go through and you like encounter the pieces of souls that are melting away of like the people who you lost along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Harshafont is there and all them. They help you through this dungeon and you fight like the ghosts of like Garleans who you fought. Like you fight the ghost of Ridditon and Julia and the twins from the end of Stormblood and all that.
Crazy, which is an insane callback, but pretty good.
Yeah.
And eventually, standing between you and Crystal Mom is Amon, aka Hermes, aka Fandaniel, because his ghost is in the live stream because you killed him about 6 levels ago. And he's like, I'm gonna get you, and you're like, well, you're a dungeon boss now and not even a trial boss.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
And so you kick his ass and rip off his flowery hat and you go, Hermes, you basic bitch. He's like, yeah, I guess you're right. And then Asahi shows up and Asahi's like, you piloted my body after I was dead, you gross fuck. I'm dragging you to hell with me.
and then Fandaniel is like, I'm getting ragged on by Asahi. I deserve this.
Yeah.
He's like, I guess it's okay.
If I'm getting dunked on by Asahi Sauce Brutus, I guess I probably should go to hell forever.
If I'm getting dunked on by the world's smallest 28-year-old incel, I guess I have to go to hell.
I do lose this one.
Yeah, I gotta take that L real hard.
And Asahi Sauce Brutus and Hermes, while in the live stream, are explicitly dragged to hell to never be reincarnated again, which is another, like, weird moment of whatever FF14's worldview is, which is people are redeemable until they're not, at which point they are excluded from the samsara and not permitted to reincarnate, period.
We're not going to talk about it too much, but it's also kind of weird, Final Fantasy XIV, that the only character who is a man who says, I'm in love with another man,
gets to go to Super Hell.
Goes to
Super Hell.
Yeah, that's right, I'm already in hell. Why do you ask? And it's like, wait a minute, FF14.
It's like, I don't know about that one, FF4. I mean, I don't like Asahi, but also I think it's kind of weird.
You're telling me the only explicitly gay guy in the MSQ
in the main plot,
is dragging to hell the only guy in the plot who is willing to express and contend with difficult emotions like depression? I don't like where you're going with this Final Fantasy XIV. Final Fantasy XIV goes, yeah, you're right, you don't. Anyway, here's Mom.
Now go fight Mom. It's like,
and then you go, oh, I don't have time to process this at all. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, And Mom's like, hey, what's up? It's me. It's Heidelin. I'm like, yeah, I know. Hi, Vana. How are you doing? She's like, pretty bad. Anyway, your plan's right on the money. You do have to go to space to fight the bird. That's the only way. I mean, like, I made the moon so that, like, yeah, I made the moon, by the way, and all the little bunnies on it. You're welcome, by the way. I made it so you can run away if you want to, but if you aren't going to run away, you should go to space to fight that bird. And you're like, cool. But she's like, but first, I have to know if you are strong enough to fight that bird in space. And you're like...
And the answer is no, because I think we died 1,100 times in that trial. But don't worry about it. We had some very good healers.
Yeah. Saturn. But and you're like, okay, Mom, well, how are we going to prove that we're strong enough to fight the bird? And she's like, well, you're going to kill me, obviously. And
I don't want to do that. And she goes, too bad.
And so we get our second trial, level 89, Heidelin.
Great.
And
anyways, kill your mom. Yeah, I know that your last trial was 8 levels ago.
I mean,
isn't there like another level?
I believe that's how Shadowbringers went too, if I'm not mistaken.
Was it really? Was it?
Yeah, because you fought Titania at like level 83, and then you didn't fight Innocence until level 89, also because Mount Golg is also level.
Oh, that's right.
That's true. Yeah.
It
just feels like Shadowbringers had way more stuff in between.
Yeah, they do it, like, it's the same amount of dungeons and trials, but, like, Shadowbringers is where they started doing that, because, like, before that, in Heaven's Word and in Stormblood, and also, like, A Realm Reborn, to what extent it matters, but, like, for them, they would actually try and space the trials evenly throughout, so you'd get an 83, an 86, and an 89. Mm-hmm. They stopped doing that. Right. But anyway, you fight her, and it's a chaotic fight, but you do beat her, and she's like, oh, good, you killed me. And I'm like, well, I was kind of hoping to hold back a little bit, considering you are God and also my mom. And she's like, no, this is fine. Anyway, you're strong enough. I'm giving you Azim's crystal, because you'll need it. It has like 1 charge of real creation magic left in it, so fucking use it wisely, you little bastard. And you're like, I will put this as a surprise tool for very soon. I will put it in my pocket. Thank you, Mom. And she's like, cool. Also, because I'm dying, by the way, just so you know, I mean, you're still gonna have all your shit, like your echo, because that's literally just magic. We went over this. Like, I just cast a spell on you. It's not that special. But I am going to leave my divine corpse here. Give me a proper burial, maybe. Like, say a few words if you care to. Please don't let anyone come.
Don't let some freak come eat me.
I will do my best, but I know at least one freak who might not be deterred by that.
You're like, I'll get on that as soon as I get back from space.
Once I get back from saving the world, Mom, you sit tight.
Don't have time for that right now, but I will take care of it as soon as possible. Don't worry.
Got time for that, Goku. And yeah, so you come back from the ITS scope, and you're like, yeah, so Mom gave me her permission. Look, I got a little rock that shows it and everything. And you're like, fuck, I guess you can take our boat. And then they're like, so how's Heidelin doing? You're like, oh, she's dead. And the bunnies go, what? Like, you killed her? And it's like, well, it's a long story, but yeah, she's dead. And they're like, oh, well, we have very complicated emotions about that, which we might get to later, or we might not. We'll figure that out.
It's like the fucking Solarians in Mass Effect, the bit in Mass Effect 2 where Morden's like, time to process my apprentice betraying me, and processed.
Yeah. And so, like, I think it was either shortly before this or, like, right now when we're like, okay, we need to finish Spaceship, and we have, like, all the warriors scene where, like, everyone that you've met and all the content before this comes bringing all the fancy Allagan metal that you need to get the rocket's thrusters in the overdrive so you can actually, like, travel.
You also need a shit ton of crystals to summon all of the
also need gas. Gas
is
really
gas.
expensive.
Yeah. I don't know if you've noticed, but gas is like $5 a gallon.
Also, was it Heidelin or who was it that just explained that, oh yeah, you can just summon the primals normally without having them possess people. We just never did it that way.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, is that, like, because it's, and this is a callback to A Realm Reborn and like some stuff we learned in Shadowbringers, the Ascians taught the beast tribes wrong on purpose.
Yeah.
Which is like, oh great, wonderful, cool. And so like, So you gather all the warriors again, which is say all the tribes, and they're like, hey, we need you to like summon your gods so that you can use your gods to power our boat to the stars. And like, we're not going to interrogate this whatsoever. That sounds like a great plan. And they all summon all their primals so that all of your Go servants can power you with mana to get to the furthest reaches of the universe in your rocket ship.
And it looks really cool.
It looks really cool.
And we get a very fun scene where Garuda is grousing about having to help landlubbers fly, basically, which is extremely fun. And Susano shows up and is like, live a little.
It's fun.
Hey!
I'm still the best primal in the game.
Still the best primal in the game. My favorite part about that is you can't hear it at all in Stormblood, but come Endwalker, it's been a while. And he's aged a little bit, you can tell it's Urianje's voice.
Yeah, it's super obvious that it's Urianje's voice actor, and it rules.
Yeah, it would. And they shoot you into space, and you're going into space, and you're in the fucking Normandy, and the bunnies are piloting the space.
It is just the By the way, it is just the Normandy.
Yeah, gotta say that ship does look super fucking cool, though.
Looks extremely cool. Very
I thought
cool. It was very cool in Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, it got revealed shot for shot like the Normandy 2 and Mass Effect 2.
Yeah.
But I think it looks design-wise more like the first Absolution, the Toonami ship.
Oh my god.
Oh man, imagine if Tom was on board.
That would have been the fucking coolest thing ever.
It's gonna be a long trip. Want to watch Dragon Ball Z?
Why is there one guy with an American voice actor in this entire thing? It's like, don't worry about it.
And also, why is he a robot? Is that you?
Steve Bloom, not like this.
Steve Bloom voices Pippa in the most cursed adaptation of Max. Anyway, and so you're in space and you're like, cool, we're cruising along, the in-flight entertainment's lovely, and it looks like we're almost at the end of the universe, which is exactly what we're charted for. I sure hope nothing fucked up happens.
Anyways.
And then the power goes out.
And then Medion shows up to do a ring to Thancred.
Why is Jew on the Grudge happening again? Uh-oh. And then you crash land on a strange rock in the middle of nowhere, and it's dark and shadowy, and the stars are all white, and it's beautiful. And they're like, where'd Thancred go? And Medion shows up like, oh, he's dead.
And all the scions go, well, we know he's not really dead because that was super anticlimactic.
Final Fantasy XIV in this moment. By the way, two things. One, Ultimate Tool, beautiful, right? Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Not as good as Amarant, but good. And I wish they didn't change the music at the end to the Christian rock version. I wish that it was just I wish it was the lo-fi beats.
Yeah.
I'm right.
You're right. You're right.
Right.
I wish you weren't, but you are right.
Sorry. I like that song too, but it also sounds like Christian rock. But I do wish that it had just stayed like the lo-fi beats to save the world 2 version at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But like Final Fantasy XIV is adorable, right? Because Ultimate Tool is beautiful, and they're like, no, Thancred's super dead. And you're like, okay, game.
Yeah, all right. Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And she's like, look, just roll with me. This is my bit, okay? I've been workshopping it. Just like, suspend your disbelief for a little bit. And you're like, fine, I guess Thancred's dead.
We'll pretend.
And then Estinian is dead, and then Y'shtola and Urianger are dead, I guess.
And she's like, no, it is really weird though, because like he died. Like I killed him super hard. He's fucking toast. I rendered his soul into fucking atoms because he's a worthless baby bitch man. But
and then you go, yes, he is, but
we like him.
He had this kind of like last thought where he was like, survive or whatever. And now you're walking in Ultima Thule, which is weird.
Which shouldn't be possible.
This is supposed to be like a field of pure dynamis where you just go into it and you get so depressed that your soul dissipates in the atoms. So I don't know how you're walking on it like it's rocks, but we'll interrogate that later. Don't get any ideas, you little freaks, and she teleports away.
I love that it is effectively like emotional antimatter. So like it's antimatter with an opinion. And
yeah.
And
it's antimatter, but you put like the icy flavoring syrup on it.
Yeah.
It tastes like grape.
They do like, the way she explains it. It implies that what you're walking on is effectively Thancred's soul. Like the areas that you're able to like move around in. The only reason you're able to do that is because Thancred is currently sacrificing himself so that you can have something tangible to interact with.
Right, because like otherwise there shouldn't even be any way for you to interact with the environment at all. Because like you said, like the dynamis should just tear your soul to little pieces.
And we'll get back to that very shortly.
Yeah. But you know, instead you're able to walk around and like you get to meet a cavalcade of little guys, which is a great part of Ultima Thule.
The little guys comes a little bit later. We start with very large guys.
Yeah.
Well, okay, we talked to some sad dragons, and Estinian sacrifices himself, finger quotes.
The thing that we also realize at this point too is that this is not just any sad dragons. This is like the ghost memories of the planet Midgardstormar was from.
Yeah, exactly.
You know that he was fleeing from something, and all of his people are dead, and you see, oh, this is them.
Yeah.
This is the ghost memory of their last moments as a species, presumably after Midgardstormar had left, ? They're super fucked. Their world is blighted, their eggs are hatching into these like demented, malformed monstrosities who can only be killed. Everything's bad. And the other thing you realize aside from this is, we don't have a way forward.
Right.
And Estinian's like, don't worry, I've got this. I'm gonna transform into an island too.
I'm also going to do a heroic sacrifice.
He's just like, I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to work out just fine. And they're like, you do know Thancred died, right? And he's like, what? And then he just blows up into there.
Huh?
He gets deleted like fucking Rorschach at the end of Watch.
It's so sad that Steve Jobs died of ligma.
Estinian's like, who's Steve Jobs? And he balls, and then transforms him into I think he gets transformed into like a gust of wind, and then you ride
jump pad. Yeah,
and you ride him to go to the second one, and you meet, instead of dragons, you meet these little freaks, these little blobby little.
I
love these dudes. I love these Tachikomas.
Yeah,
and they're called the Aya, and they're like, hey, oh wow, you have a meat body. Can I have it? And they're like, well, A, no. B, why? And they're like, well, you see, I'm just kind of like a soul. We, like, as a people, like, successfully divided our soul from our body so that we could live forever. However, I want to die, and unless I can put myself into a body and bodily die, I cannot actually die for real. So, like, we're trying to figure out how to get our bodies back. And we're like, well, that's crazy. Why? I mean, like, you went to all that hard work and like as you're going through this area and you're like meeting them and whatever, and like, well, why'd you go to all this hard work to lose your bodies and you're trying to get them back so you can die? And like, well, we wanted to, live forever and do eternal science, and like, because that was a good idea. And so we removed our souls from our bodies and we did eternal science. And then we discovered the heat death of the universe.
Yeah, which is a great moment for Y'shtola, where it's like, hey, we're going to tell you, Y'shtola Rule, the character who's like, her whole shtick is like discovering the mysteries of the universe. We're going to tell you the final mystery of the universe, right?
Which is that everything grinds to a halt because all energy eventually dissipates into useless thermal energy.
Surprises entropy, yeah.
And then she gets the existential crisis that all of us got in like the first grade when we learned about that.
Except not really, because after like 15 seconds, she's like, okay, the existential, the heat death of the universe is like 15 billion years away. Why would I care about that now when I'm gonna live for,
like 100 at most.
Optimistically, like 100 more at most. Like,
also,
no.
She's not even just like, well, that's a long time away. She's also like, you can't prove that's real. Your understanding might be fucked up.
Who knows?
He could fix it. You don't know. Shut up.
We literally live in a fantasy universe versus like the actual universe that you and I live in. So yeah, she's
probably
could fix entropy.
She's like, I get that your society has a law of thermodynamics, but that's not how things work on Ethereus.
Y'shtola's like, well, have you considered this, that we're a video game and that our world will just continue to exist in this state forever and ever until the servers shut down? So suck on that.
And he's like, that's right, the heat death of the universe is basically the servers shutting down. And they're like, shut the fuck up, little man. And then she also does heroic sacrifice.
Final Fantasy 11 is still running, so no, the servers aren't shutting down anytime soon. Thank you.
And so she's like, I'm going to do a heroic sacrifice. And Orion J is like, don't worry, I'm here to do a heroic sacrifice too. And she's like, why? And he's like,
Orion J is like, we couldn't think of enough little guys to interact with, so 2 of us have to do this one.
Orion J's already interacted with a lot of little guys in the forums of the operates. Don't worry about it. He's guys.
Orion J is like, pray they didn't want to have to make a 4th one of these zones, so I have to shuffle off here. I hope it's not to bother Ishtal. And she's like, well, I kind of wanted my moment, but I guess I am still a woman in FF14, so I can't have a moment to myself, can I? And Orion is just like, hell no, you can't, and they both die.
Die.
They die.
Finger quotes.
And then they...
Actually, no, that's actually the point where Ishtal looks the player character, not even like the warrior of light, looks the guy holding the controller in the eye and goes, we're not really dying. There's a way to fix this.
Well, she's like, hey, I know that you have that creation magic rock. And you're like, yeah, I did actually know that because that happened to like 30 minutes ago and I'm not fucking stupid. They maybe should have put that earlier in the expansion pack. And she's like, look, whatever you do, I need you to understand that it is our sacrifice that is giving you the ability to move forward. So if you get the idea in your head to use that to bring us back, you're going to undo all your hard-won progress. So please let us stay dead. And the Warrior of Light's like, I'll just file that away for a bunch of bullshit that I'm going to figure out a way around in approximately half an hour.
And then there were 3.
Yeah, and then with that,
4.
it's like, it's 4, yes, because it's you, Twins, and Garaha.
Oh yeah, Garaha's still here, that's right.
All right, let's go to the 3rd zone full of weird little guys. And you get to this crazy hexagonal robot place. And you're like, wait a fucking minute. That's
I know those floors.
I played the Omega Raids. Wait a minute.
You get to a StarCraft map.
Yeah.
And you find the Omicron, who are these like robot people. And their whole thing is like, yeah, so we were this like prey species, basically. And we realized that, like, in order to defend ourselves, we had to augment our bodies with metal and become robotic in order to become strong enough to foist off our predators. And they did that, and they're like, okay, cool, we took over a planet, but there might be predators beyond our star. And so they became stronger. It's like, well, there might be predators beyond our galaxy. And so they became stronger. And you deal with this ghost image of the Omicron in this state of, like, and also, sidebar for later content, you do meet one of them who you find out later is the Omicron that became Omega, whose despair, which he claims not to understand, is crystallized forever here in Ultima Thule.
It rules.
It's so wonderful. And you deal with the despair of realizing, like, are we the baddies?
Yeah.
Like, are we, we keep rebuilding ourselves to be stronger in case there's a predator, but, like, what if we're the apex predator at this point? What is all this for if we don't have anything to defend ourselves against?
And that's it's very funny. Because again, we talked a lot about how Shadowbringers is explicitly in conversation with Nier Automata, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot.
Uh-huh.
And Endwalker, even more so, is in conversation with Nier Automata.
Yeah.
Like the inevitability of dying and like what do you do with that information and like how do you process what comes and like why are we here? Like 2B's entire speech at the very beginning of the goddamn game is like, hey, why am I here if not to suffer? And if I ever met the god who put me here to suffer, I will kill him. And Endwalker is about meeting the god that put you here to suffer. You call her mom as a joke. And the like, Omicron are literally like the machine life forms because the machine life forms whole thing is that like our purpose is to do war, right? But that is a self-terminating question eventually because eventually like war has got to end. And what happens when the war is over? And for the machine life forms and for your Hawk Command, the answer is, well, we'll just self-perpetuate it forever, right? But the Omicron are like, well, we've run out of war to do. And that's what, Sir...
we may even be the thing that we were originally fighting against.
Right, yeah. And it's like, that's literally like why Sir hasn't given any commands. Like, so you meet like the person who's like over all these Omicron in this kind of preserved slice of their society. And Sir just hasn't given any commands in a long time because he's realized, like, oh, hey, we're at a war to fight. Like, we don't have anything to do, so we're just gonna kind of sit here until we all run out of energy and just die, right?
They're like, we fought the dragons and beat them effortlessly. And they were the level 90 ultimate content for our version of FF14. There are no more gods left to slay.
Right.
For us.
And so it's like, well, what do we do now? And the answer is we just spin our wheels until we run out of energy and die, which is, again, not an answer.
Yep.
Right. And Graha's like, that's right, that's not an answer. Anyway, I have to also heroically sacrifice myself by turning you into crystal.
Which is like the exact, like, so at this point, Endwalker was like not getting me. Like, it just wasn't. I was like, okay, well, I know that Sinian is fine, I know that Ariange and Shola are fine, but it's something about, like, the way it was like, yeah, I just really want to keep hanging out with you. And since, like I said, Endwalker is mostly about hanging out with your cool friends, and it's like, yeah, I want to keep hanging out with you. I was like, keep hanging out with you too. And from that moment on, I just spent the rest of Endwalker crying. And I'm like, I'm talking like full on, just like, I mean, I think you two were on the phone with me too while it was happening.
Actually, I don't know that we were, because I think we left you to go do that by yourself, if I'm not mistaken, because you wanted you to get the crushing despair experience for that.
That was when we first started. Ultimately.
Oh no! Eventually.
Oh no! You're right. Eventually, we got together for that.
Eventually, I needed to hold somebody's hand while I like walked through Ultima Thule crying.
Yeah, I mean, same thing for me. Like, going forward, when I came back to 14, I'm like, I'm not playing this game unless you three are on the call with me.
Right.
Yeah.
I need that buffer.
You had a bunch of NPCs to hold your hands, and then you realize, like, well, even if they're not really dead, they are being taken away from me, and I'm not very comfortable.
I like these NPCs. They're my friends. And then I was just crying. From that moment on, it was just disgusting. I don't think I've ever... No, that's still... Tales of Berseria still has the crown for the hardest I've ever cried playing a video game, because it was disgusting. But Endwalker is a very, very close second. It wasn't disgusting, but it came super close to being disgusting.
It might have been nasty, or perhaps
it was pretty gnarly, yeah.
We're 98% of the way from getting like the snotty One Piece tears.
Yeah. Berseria got the snotty One Piece tears out of me. You should go play Tales of Berseria.
Yeah, I need to.
But yeah, and so like, you know, Graha does his, like, he turns himself into a crystal bridge to go to the next zone. And it's just like, at this point, the music is playing, and yeah, I joke it's Christian rock, but also like it's like getting me directly in my soul. And you're walking with the twins who you've been hanging out with since literally the very beginning, as in on the fucking
and they're the only
carriage.
ones left.
Yeah,
they're the only ones left. They've been on with they've literally been with you since the literal beginning, aka the carriage riding into Gridania or Limsa Lamensa or Ul'dah, right?
Yeah.
And so of course they're the last ones walking around with you, and you're just like walking and getting to just kind of look very quietly around Ultima Thule, and you're just like,
the last area is empty.
Yeah, you get this place that looks kind of like, it's almost like a splice out of a Fallout 4 zone a little bit, in a way that like in a way it's different to Garlemald, where it's like there's like what appears to maybe be an open air eatery of some kind.
It looked like
outdoor tables, but it's like it's from an alien culture. Like, things are definitely not perfectly recognizable, and there is absolutely no evidence that anyone was here at all ever, except for the fact that there's a thing here that someone made.
It looks like, to me, it looked like a campground. And the idea of a completely barren, empty campground is one of those, like, it's like a playground at midnight, you know?
right.
With all the tables and everything still there, just not an evidence that anyone has ever been here for a long time.
'Cause a campground whose sole purpose is to have people stay there overnight. The idea that it is empty and you're still there is haunting.
Yeah,
And
it's very like you're kind of standing in the middle of a liminal space.
Yeah.
And Medion shows up and she's like, hey, what's up? It's me, Medion. How you been doing? I noticed there's a lot less of you now. And they're like, yeah, so what's the deal with this place, Medion? And she's like, well, most of the place I found, like, there was, you know, people, and they were either on the verge of dying, like they were on death's door or about to commit suicide or whatever. This is one of the places I found while I was doing my business, where everyone was already dead and gone. No idea who was here. No idea what happened to them. Everyone, like, it was just like this when I found it.
Right.
Like, I could not point to a footstep in the dust if I wanted to. There's nothing here. And, like, it's the more, to me at least, the more insidious kind of horror of, like, it's not just the inevitability of death or that nothing matters, or that you don't leave behind an impact or whatever else. It's this image of this world that used to exist and then stopped existing, and then there's no way even really to tell who the people there were or what happened to them.
Right.
The only evidence that is left at all is the bones of what was there, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And she's like, she's like, much like Principal Skinner, she's like, or no, not Principal Skinner, like Homer's dad. Excuse me. She's like, it'll happen to you. And Alice and Alpha are like, no, it won't. And I'm like, a video game, you are not about to take my children away from me. And Alpha and Alice go like, bye. And then they also die. And they're like, well, fuck.
And then you're just crying even more because you can explicitly say like, hey, I promised your parents you'd come back in one piece. And it's like, I know they're fine, but also they're not fine. Those are my kids. Now I'm crying.
And then...
It's so disgusting. Oh, God. I'm
have to walk to the
everywhere.
end.
Well, yeah, and now it's time to end walk.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, you have to walk because your grief weighs 10,000 pounds.
You get a status ailment.
Yeah.
You get a debuff.
You get a debuff called Walking to the End that basically goes, hey, by the way, you're depressed. Also, you're over encumbered. Please drop some items. And you're like, what? That's not in this game. I'm like, no, shut the fuck up. It's just in the game.
It's still Fallout 4.
You walk very slowly through the bridge that they made for you as you can like hear the departed voices of even more people who you left behind, like some people who you heard from in the Ideoscope and some people who you didn't. And then you walk forward.
Ardbert.
Yeah,
Like
you do hear from
Ardbert.
Ardbert, and I got super hyped when I heard Ardbert's voice, though. Like, I did mark out a little bit. I was like, everything's sad, but my boy Ardbert's here!
I cried.
cried.
And you get to the end of this bridge. And
It's like the fucking meme of, like, the stick figure that's, like, caught in depression, and then, OMG, Ardbert!
Yeah, everything lights up. You're like, oh, Ardbert.
Celebrities shop here too, says Ardbert with the hand on the can of peaches. And so you get to the end of this bridge that Alcé and Althana have made for you with their souls while you're wallowing through your grief. And it's so close to the end point, to this big ball of crystallized depression that's just looming in the sky, and it stops just short. And Medion shows up.
Can't make it.
Yeah, you just can't make it. Like, you pushed on, you lost everything, and here you are still unable to make it. And Medion's like, haha, you basic bitch, you suck, go fuck yourself. You're gonna die sad and alone, and then I'm gonna microwave your whole planet. And Warrior Light's like, I got this crystal. And she's like, yeah, what are you gonna do with that little fucking rock, you twerp? Are you gonna bring back your friends and undo all your hard-won progress? And like, I got a better idea. And you use this rock to bring back Hades and Hyphladeus from the life stream.
And it whips.
You basically look the genie in the eye and say, I wish for more wishes.
No, even better than that, you look the genie in the eye and said, I wish that God is real and he's my best friend and will do anything I ask. And so your two boyfriends show up and they're like, hey, what's up? Spent some time in the live stream and all my memories are back because actually your scholar friend was totally right. Dying does fix your broken memories. I can't believe I spent those 12,000 years acting like a fucking clown.
Emmett Self's like, you were fucking right. I'm so pissed off at you. I can't believe it.
God damn it. He's so, because even... You bring that motherfucker back
remember us, and I forgot, and I'm so mad at the dramatic irony of it all.
You bring that motherfucker back from the dead to help you out at the end, and he's still the grumpiest piece of shit you've ever fucking met.
Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah, because you interrupted his pleasant stay in the afterlife.
Finally taking a nap after 12,000 years. Goddamn.
You know when Emmett Self got his memories back, he's like, at least I don't have to confront the Warrior of Light again. at least it'll never come up. I won't have to see them and admit that I was wrong.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
God.
so he's like, anyway, we brought all your friends back, and you're like, wait, isn't that gonna fuck up everything? Like, hi guys, I'm glad you're here, but also isn't gonna fuck up anything? And I'm like, no, I'm a fucking creation wizard. You're gravy, man. Go for it. We're gonna make it rich to the bridge. You go fight that little goth bird girl whose ass I hate. And
then-
she's, oh fuck.
One of the best cutscenes, and I mean this unironically, I fucking love this cutscene so much because Emmett Selk looks at you, and he's like, "Yeah, you've done all this. You made it to the end of the universe, the literal edge of reality. But have you ever been to the biggest ball of twine in Minnesota?"
And you're like, well, no, I guess they haven't. And he's like, well, I have. And if you're fucking Azem, you better keep on being alive because you have to at least have seen as much of your world as I have. And he's like, now go for it, you little freak. And you're like, got it, boss.
He just lists off a bunch of locations, and we don't know anything about them, and we know they're patch quests. He basically just lists off the patch content.
Literally, actually, yeah.
I've made an itinerary for your next 3 years of vacation.
But he's like, have you ever gone to Europe and done the tourist trap shit?
And you're like, no,
No,
I've never been to Europe. He's like, well then, you gotta go the fuck. Have you ever been to Australia? No. Well, go to Australia and get attacked by a giant spider then, you little bitch.
They've got fucked up bugs there. I know you love fucked up bugs.
You mean you've never been to Epcot?
Little
I'm
Adam
like,
Jr., are you trying to tell me you've never made it to level 99?
I'm not saying you have to make it an annual thing, but you should really go to Anime Expo at least once.
I've been through space and time. I've broken down the barriers of reality and crossed dimensions. Yeah, but you've never been to an IHOP.
And you're like, well, yeah, Emmett, I guess you're right. What am I supposed to do with that? It's like, well, first off, go kick that bird's ass, and then go back to Aetheris and go see some shit, you fucking loser.
And that's like, okay, we're taking a break from the recap real fast, because the thing is that, like, when I finished Endwalker, we'll talk about this, and we'll talk about the actual end for real in just a second. When I finished Endwalker, somebody said, hey, a lot of people are kind of ill that like the final boss is a bird girl that you meet in the 87 dungeon, basically, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't get that, and it's like, well, yeah, but the bird girl is a metaphor.
Yeah.
The bird girl is not, I mean, like, the bird girl is a very sad autistic bird girl who we love very much. She's a sweet baby child who's had a hard time, but also the bird girl is a metaphor, right? Because, like, Endwalker is about death, but it's right there in the name. Endwalker is more so about, like, coping with endings. It's not about, like, death. I mean, like, death is an ending, but it's about, like, every kind of ending, right?
Yeah.
Like, not just, like, you know, death, but also, like, the end of a civilization, the end of a friendship, the end of, you know, kind of your perception of reality, and also the end of a story, right? Like, Endwalker is saying, like, if you've been, and I haven't, but Oats has, if you've been playing Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn, since the beginning, this is 10 years of a story that's been building up and is now finally at the end. And if you're like a normal person who's extremely invested in a story that's been happening for this long, and I mean, One Piece is ending in a couple of years, right? Like, it's finally happening. If you have been invested in a story this long, the actual question that's looming over your head is not like, how is all of this going to end? It is, what am I going to do when this is over? Right?
Yeah.
Like, so much of the existential crisis caused by the end of a story is that you don't know what you're going to do with yourself in the aftermath of the story being over. That's why people kind of, when they do finish a video game that they've put a lot of time into, they kind of have like a post-video game blues.
Yeah.
You're like, what am I going to do with myself now? I've been putting so much of myself into this thing I've been playing, I don't know what I'm gonna do every night for the next, week. Because I've been playing this thing, right?
That's exactly how I get with every single, like, RPG or, like, significantly long game. It's like, when I finish a game, I cannot do anything else, like, for the rest of the day.
Right, absolutely, because you're processing things.
It is explicitly, it is a kind of mourning.
Yeah, absolutely. You are literally mourning the end of a story.
It is effectively, you had a life that lasted for approximately 1 or 2 weeks and then ended. Mm-hmm. And now you are still left to clean up the mess after and know that life can never exist again.
Now imagine if you've been living that life for 10 years.
I do remember the first time that hit me, and it's why I associate. I think of it. It was P4.
This P4, yeah, absolutely.
P4 was the first time where I'm like, oh, my friends are gone. Oh God.
Yeah,
and I hear the end theme of, like, when I get that like morning of a good story is over, the P4 end credits play in my head.
Absolutely, yeah, because P4 is the first time it's like for a lot of people, it's like the first time you kind of lived in a video game for an extended period of time, right?
Yeah. I had that for Persona 4. I want to say I had it, because I got the Persona 4 a little late, but I want to say I had it before Persona 4. I had it with Persona 3 Portable.
Sure.
Where that is a similar kind of thing, but it is also, ends the way Persona 3 does.
Right.
Which I'm not going to get into. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
And it hits you very significantly. I was like, well, fuck. I spent like 100 hours in that, and it's over.
Yeah.
Now what do I do with myself, right? And if you, like Oats, have been playing the same video game for a really long time, that is an even more intense feeling, right? And Final Fantasy XIV is literally at that moment saying, like, with all of this kind of sadness with ends of stories and lives and civilizations and friendships and all that stuff, it's saying, like, hey, it's cool, we get it, this is a stressful moment, because, like, this long-running story is finally over, but there is always something after the end, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's still shit to do, and that is kind of, like, the whole point, and, like, kind of what's going on with Medion is that she isn't understanding that, like, yeah, planets and lives and friendships and civilizations and all that shit, they all end eventually, one way or another, but there's always something afterward.
Yeah. There's still stuff to do.
There's still stuff to do, and you can still move on from the end of whatever it is. And that was the problem with the Asians, is that they couldn't and wouldn't let themselves move on. And Endwalker, it is in the name again.
Yeah.
You are walking past the end of a story in order to process it being over and being cool with it and going, okay, there is life after this, right?
And even if there isn't life for you after, there will still be life.
Right, yeah. And, like, that's kind of what all of this is about.
And, until you get to that point, there's always stuff to do.
Right. Like, there's always stuff to do. There's always a new thing to go out and enjoy, even when, like, shit is at its bleakest. And that's what is happening with M itself being like, yeah, you don't know what's going on with the 12. You don't know anything about Marasidia. You don't know anything about what's going on in like under the ocean.
Yeah.
So go out there and enjoy your fucking patch quest.
Have you ever been to the ocean, you stupid idiot?
It's like, well, yes. Have you ever been under it? Well, yeah, I actually can't breathe under the water.
Well, have you ever been really deep under it where the pressure would crush you like a grape?
It's like, yeah, isn't that what Amaranth was? And so we don't want to talk about Amaranth.
I was like, that's different. I made that one. I mean, there's shit that I didn't make under the ocean.
Yeah. I just love the idea of, of Emmett Selk of all people being like, it's okay
Yeah.
There's gonna be more. You're gonna have more to do. Basically, like, since this didn't have any patch content when it came out, basically saying, don't worry, there's still 14. 14 is gonna keep going.
Right.
We're gonna close the gate on a lot of shit here, but we're not done.
If this were the last expansion pack, you'd be at 6.3 right now, so bear with me. We are concluding the lead up to the next shit that's happening. Just be patient, please. And after all that...
Don't cancel your sub yet!
You want to see Hildebrand again, right? He's like, didn't he go to the first? He's like, yeah, well, you haven't dealt with that yet, have you?
You're like, oh my god, you're right.
What, the idea of Emmett so saying, like, Hildebrand's story isn't over yet either.
How do you know Hildebrand? He's like, little did you know there were actually 15 members of the Convocation. And before he can explain himself, he disappears.
He's gone.
He busies himself with creation magic so he can chase the little sad bird, who is still a threat that has to be dealt with.
You can chase the little sad bird into the last dungeon in Endwalker.
Yeah, and you're like, I'm gonna get you, little sad bird. And she's like, nuh-uh, I'm going into my crystallized hellhole. And you're like, what's in the crystallized hellhole? And she's like, come, I'll show you.
Bad times.
Not a good time.
And she basically does. She does the soup. Like, yeah, it's both Amarant 2 and also the extremely condensed version of what you just went through this entire last zone of Ultima Thule, where she's like, all right, here's one planet that got super fucked up because there was a plague that fucking turned the seas black, and it made even the people who weren't sick kill each other, and it was horrible. Anyway, here's another planet. This is America planet, and everyone blew each other up because it's America planet, and they loved freedom, and they wanted the freedom to blow each other up, which is crazy. And I'm like, hold on, FF14, you're making some political statements I might actually agree with. And then she's like, all right, also, by the by, this one might seem familiar. Here's a completely unrelated planet where people had no value of life and death, and the thing they valued most was to simply die painlessly at the end of all the things they suffered through. And they also extinguished themselves because their world was trashed and they wanted nothing more to die. Isn't that all fucked up? And you're like, yeah, well, I killed all these bosses, so it's great. Also, this one, I'm not saying this is Aetheris. This one's got some pretty similar vibes. Like, yeah, I know it's cool, isn't it?
And then later in an interview, Natsuko Ishikawa was like, yes, I am explicitly referencing the ancients with this last part of the last dungeon. We know.
Yeah, no, it's just that the bird is really petty.
Yeah.
She wants to make sure that you get it.
She wants to make sure that you get it. The other important thing is if you are nice enough to have a group of people who will walk with you slowly through it, or I guess you can probably do it with trust.
Walk to the end with you through it.
Yeah. So if you do that and you go read all of the notes, you will realize very quickly that once again, Hermes fucked up because his hypothesis is flawed. Because by sending this bird out to do this, you start to realize that every single one of these horrible incidents that are occurring happen because she makes contact with them and starts asking questions that cause them to start to spiral out of control and kill each other. Or, by getting close, she has already collected so much sorrow and despair that the shooting star that is Meteon circling the planet before she makes contact makes them want to kill each other.
Yeah, it's actually really funny. It's why the Prime Directive exists in Star Trek.
Yep.
Right? Like, Meteon is violating the Prime Directive by, like, landing on a planet full of people who ostensibly are not prepared to make contact with something from outer space, and is like, hey, why are you alive? Why are you still living? Also, hey, I'm carrying a lot of Dynamis with me. That's really sad because I just flew through space for 1,500 years. And it's lonely and dark and cold out there. Anyway, why are you alive in this cold, dark, unfeeling universe? And then all that Dynamis starts doing shit to people and like, why are we alive? Maybe we should all die.
There's also a really fun joke there, which is of Hermes, circling the planet, entering the atmosphere, being Medion, ostensibly probably looking like a meteor as she comes in, and the understanding that even though we wish on shooting stars now, classically they are a portent of disaster that would drive people insane. Because they see the shooting star and go, something terrible has happened somewhere. And it is going to immediately make my anxiety go through the roof and make me start acting like super crazy. And so it's Hermes' fault. I guess is what we mean to say. It's all been Hermes' fault the entire time. He's like, I'm gonna make a bird, I'm gonna give it autism, depression, and anxiety, and also the magical power to bring the apocalypse with it wherever it goes. I'm sure it'll work out fine.
I'm sure it's fine, don't worry about it. Oops.
And so
I kind of created the Fermi paradox on my own.
Oh no! What if the Fermi paradox was just something I made for fun?
It turns out the real Fermi paradox was inside us all along.
Yes, Hermes.
The real Fermi paradox of the Final Fantasies we 14'd along the way. Interestingly, and also just note, this last dungeon is called the Dead Ends. In other languages, it is referred to as Final Fantasy Remnants, with the implication that these were worlds from other Final Fantasy games. But, not ones that exist. Like, they're not reference worlds. They're just theoretical other Final Fantasy games.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's interesting.
17, 18, and 19.
That's correct.
Yeah. So when we see the Grebuloffs in Final Fantasy 16, you know to blame it on Endwalker.
That's correct.
The Grebuloffs are little seal dudes in the fish helmets.
Our little Namazu guys who die horribly, but because they're kind of Namazu shaped, you're like, yay!
They're like, yay! They're all dead! Yay!
Medion's like, I don't think you're getting out of this what I'm expecting you to get out of this. It's like, but we all hate the Namazu a whole lot, Medion. You probably shouldn't have picked fish people.
And anyway, you clear her challenges, and she's like, "Oh fuck, you found me." And like, yeah, that's right, Medion. Me and my 7 friends are here to fight you. And she's like, no, you're not. I cast Super Boss Tornado from Hell Depression, and then flings everyone around at lightning speed. And you're like, well, fuck, there's not an arena for me to fight on. This seems kind of messed up.
And actually it whips, because at this point the Warrior of Light's like, oh, well, everything's fucked, and I really don't want my cool friends, who again, Endwalker is mostly about breaking up with your boyfriend, killing depression, and hanging out with your cool friends. You don't want your cool friends to die, so the Warrior of Light just does the cool thing where they hit the recall button because they gave you
a surprise tool to help us later.
They gave a surprise tool that'll help us later. That's basically like an oh shit button. So if things go really bad, you can be teleported back to the spaceship to like regroup and make things okay. And the Warrior of Light's like, no, I like you guys too much, so I'm gonna send you back to the ship, and I'm gonna deal with this on my own. I'm gonna handle it. And it's like, how are you gonna handle it? I'll simply handle it.
But Warrior of Light, and being rarely ungenre savvy, is like, no, I don't need the power of friendship. I will simply do it on my own.
Anyways, your best friend shows up to be like, what's your fucking problem? Yes, of course you need help to do this.
Yeah, and so you're like, well, fuck, I have to go fight this boss, and like, I gotta like, I can't even get a footing on here. I don't know if I can summon. And then suddenly, after having loomed in the background through implication, Shinryu comes back with the voice of your boyfriend. It's like, I'm here to pick you up from the bar.
On the Mother Crystal.
Literally.
I found your mom. She was dead as hell, and I ate her so that I would have the power to turn into a dragon and chase you across the galaxy.
Does that piss you off? Can we fight now?
No, actually, it's really cool, and I'm in love with you.
It's a little romantic. And he's like, "There's nothing more romantic than fighting me."
There's 2 bits in this scene where I fucking lost it. One is the idea of Xenos strolling into Charlian.
I know!
Being like, hey, so where's the Warrior of Light? And Tataru being like, space! They're in space! Go leave now! Please get out of here! Please leave us alone! Go to space!
He's like, can I go ask Mom about them being in space? And I'm like, well, Mom's dead. And he's like, I have an idea.
That's not a problem.
Tataru's like, I don't care what you do, you need to be anywhere besides here.
Yeah, go to the live stream. I'm sure you won't come back from that, she says, sending him into the ideoscope, where he finds the corpse of God, and he's like, I bet if I ate this, I could turn into a dragon again and fly across the universe to go find my rival. And he does it. By God, he does it. He turns to a dragon, and he sees you still contending with the bird girl. Like, hey, yeah, I'd love to fight you, but I got this bird girl still. And he's like, really? This kid has you on the ropes? You fucking moron. What are you doing?
No, that line, I lost it because he's like, this is your prey. It's not already dead. And I'm just imagining the Warrior of Light being like, I'm working on it.
It's so funny because his genuine surprise in his voice is so like
so good.
I thought you'd have handled it by now. It's still
what happened to you simply handling it? It's like I'm working on it.
I've been busy. You know when you're about to do something and then someone tells you to do it and you're like, well, now I don't want to.
Well, the problem is, unfortunately, at this point, you do have to.
You literally have to. You literally have to do it to save the world.
And you get an extremely cool, your final trial, right? Your 89 trial, in which you fight the End Singer, which is the Super God Mode Beast version, crystallized depression of Bird Girl. She's very goth now. She's a floating head, like a biblical angel. Also, your arena is you're on the back of your dragon boyfriend, who's flying you through space as you fight this evil bird.
Anyways, the end of Endwalker fucking whips ass is what we're saying.
Endsinger is going to have some of the worst mechanics ever.
I think Heidelin is way worse, having done both of them with you now. I actually think Endsinger is more manageable.
The fucking planets, though.
Principally, this is a fight in which this evil bird throws planets at you while you're on the back of your dragon boyfriend, and then when you successfully dodge them, she reverses the flow of time to throw the same planet at you again.
But you can see those planets on the edge of the arena, and eventually you're like, oh, okay, well, I need to be over there. Fucking, no, nothing in Heidelin. I still can't call anything in Heidelin. I'm sorry. I can call things in Endsinger, but, like, no. Mom is meaner to me than my sad bird friend. That makes sense.
Yeah. This is also a very cool set piece fight where you go through and she's about to do a big raid wide or whatever, and you're like, okay, we use a tank LB3 to save ourselves. You do. And then she's like, well, guess what? I got another one of those. And then she fucking wipes you. And you're like, well, fuck. And then the screen cuts back in, and you're all back alive. And she goes, Dynamis, as your limit break bar fills up, and you realize you've been using the power of friendship the entire time.
The coolest shit ever!
And then the music changes to the fucking theme of Endwalker, and you're just losing your mind the entire time. And at that point, the fight also turns into a cakewalk. Like, she stops throwing planets at you and stuff, and you can start just wailing on her.
Victory lap.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe it also, in addition to being an Endwalker theme, it works in, if I'm not mistaken, I believe this fight, works in bits from the Ultima weapon theme.
That's correct.
Which is understood to not, in fact, be the Ultima weapon theme. It is the Warrior of Light.
It is the Warrior, Big Tacos is the Warrior of Light theme, which rules. And it's just like this huge, like, it's this great victory lap moment. At that point, you're untouchable. If you're doing this right, you're playing it with a bunch of friends to finish what has been so far just a bunch of nightmare trials and dungeons back to back. Oh my god. And it fucking whips, is what I'm saying. Like, it's I'm so full from catharsis.
Yum.
At this point. Yum, delicious. All this catharsis feels so good.
And so I guess to continue from there, because we're about to get to the real cherry on top of this whole debacle.
Oh my god, yes.
So you beat the bird, and she's like, "Oh fuck!" and then she dies. And you and your dragon boyfriend get kind of like sputter out and end up in this featureless void at the end of the universe.
You end up in the void where in the FF7 final Sephiroth battle void.
Mhm.
But you do get to talk to the bird for a little bit and tell her that everything's going to be okay, and it's nice.
Yeah. And after that, and like actually she ends up here too, but she kind of like gets away or whatever. But like, so you end up here in this featureless void of Xenos, who has spent all of his dragon energy as just a normal boy again. A quote unquote normal boy again. And he's like, well, you won. And you're like, uh-huh. And he's like, you got no more looming threats.
That's right.
You did it. And you're like, you want me to fight you? And he's like, you know I want you to fight me. And if you are...
if you're not a cop, you pick the good answer.
There
if
is
you
the
pick
correct
the other
answer.
two answers, you're a cop. That's the actual thing.
Unfortunately, and he basically accuses you, like, I know that whatever kind of hero you claim to be, I know you are the same kind of animal I am. You want to fight me because we have to fight here. And the correct answer is, now, while giving him the most self-pleased, like, we are about to fuck smirk that you have ever seen Warrior of Light have, is, now that I cannot deny.
And if you pick any other answer, you're a cop. I'm sorry. Because the deal is that from the moment I lost that first fight in Stormblood, right? So for me, it hasn't been several years. It's only been like a couple of hours in the grand scheme of things. I lost to him in Stormblood, and I remember asking everybody I know, please tell me there is a solo duty where I fight Xenos with none of my friends and I win, right? Like, I have myself a fucking Virgil 3. That's all I wanted from this goddamn game since the beginning of Stormblood, right?
Yeah, and we're like, I don't know, maybe you'll get it. Maybe you'll get it.
Everyone's like, you kind of get something like that in the end of Alamigo, and I'm like, I'm still doing that with other people.
Yeah, and then you fight him, and then he dies, and you're like, well, I'm not getting it. And then he comes back, and you're like, well, maybe I'm getting it. And then he's not in the plot at all for 2 DLCs. I'm like, maybe I'm really not getting it. And then you get here.
And it owns. I'm sorry, I can't imagine doing this fight as anything other than a DPS, but like, fuck, it owns. Oh my god.
I did it as a warrior because that's just what I happened to have leveled. It was alright. It was a little slow, but like, you know.
Yeah.
You get, because you don't have anyone with you, you get extra lives, which is great.
I want to be able to redo that as a black mage at some point, because that seems like the worst and most painful way to do it. Which means that winning will be all the more satisfying.
I will say,
as a scholar at some point.
I will say that doing it as a summoner kind of lost the impact of the duel in a lot of ways.
Sure, because you're just like running away from him because you're a magical range DPS. However,
I did it as a samurai.
Sara did it as a dragoon as well. So Oats and Sara had the ideal final Xenos fight.
Like I think tank was a fine way to do that. I just wouldn't do it as a ranged DPS because, as is the theme for ranged DPS, doing any solo content as a ranged DPS is fucking miserable.
It's misery. But it's fun.
I had been playing for, I think, like, with a couple of intermittent moments, I had been playing, like, non-stop Final Fantasy XIV for, like, 4 years. And that entire time, I had been waiting for this moment. And it was everything I wanted and more.
It's literally all you want from that moment. It's like, it's you, it's Xenos, you've got a shit ton of extra lives, go wild. And
it's like also like the format of the fight is like you'd have the fight with Xenos where he's doing all these crazy test of your reflexes, like crazy AoEs and shit with like huge areas and like really like twitch calls, and then you beat him once and he's like, this is to go even further beyond. and he unleashes his fucking avatar form as a Reaper, and then you fight him again and he's even harder.
It's so cool. And eventually, like, once you pick up on like what each of the, because like it is like a Devil May Cry fight. Like, it's the only time, it's the like I said, all video games got to be more like Devil May Cry, and Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker becomes like goes the closest to becoming a Devil May Cry, because like every single one of his moves has an extremely explicit call out, and it's like if he says this, you know he's about to do this, and that's a Devil May Cry, I'm here to tell you. And it's great. You have yourself a true, genuine fucking Virgil 3 at the end of the universe, and it is satisfaction embodied, right? And I just, it's all I wanted from the video game. I literally wanted nothing more from Final Fantasy XIV except for this one thing.
Yeah.
And I got it. I got it, and I got out of it, and I was probably the most. My one critique is that I can't easily do it again. I have to do New Game Plus and go through all of the back half of Endwalker in order to do that fight again. There's not like I can't just make it like, because I am deranged. I have made saves in other video games. Be like, I want to do that fight again. I'm gonna hit a button and go do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you understand.
Agreed.
Yeah, and in Devil May Cry's, the big one-on-one fights, they're just separate missions. And once you finish a Devil May Cry game, you can just go pick a mission out of a list and just go do it. And like I do that all the time. And you can't do that very easily in Final Fantasy XIV. So I am asking on my hands and knees for me to just be able to go do that fight whenever without having to go through all of Endwalker, the back half of Endwalker again.
I genuinely think that is on the docket because it is so similar to Memoria Misera, which is a Bozia thing that Ben has finally been able to experience. It is a very sick-ass fight. It has a really cool, but it's like locked in a duty, and you can't really access it except out of New Game Plus, and you have to do like a shit ton of other stuff within the duty in order to get that fight again. Mm-hmm. And then they just gave it an extreme trial makeover, and you can just read it whenever.
Right? Yeah.
I'm very excited for the prospect of that fight eventually getting its Memoria Misera EX equivalent.
Sea of Stars EX, please.
Yes.
Versus Xenos EX would be insane.
Bring 7 of your friends and have a good time. And it's like, I will, actually. That sounds like
boyfriend at the end of the universe extreme.
Yeah.
I can fix him ultimate.
Yeah.
I cannot fix him unreal.
I will let him make me worse, savage.
All I'm saying is I would be a day one procer over that one. Like,
absolutely. Absolutely.
Anything else?
Yeah, you fight your boyfriend. It's the coolest. It's you make up with your boyfriend. It's like, okay, we broke up. I guess we're getting back together. You make up with your boyfriend. You fight him. Some stuff happens.
Yeah.
And then the thingy drops down from the sky, the teleport button to get you home.
So to give it a little more flavor. You're both laying there after your fight.
We missed the best part of the fight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is when the gameplay stops and it's just the two of you punching each other in the face.
You have the scene from the end of MGS4.
Yeah.
You have the scene from the end of Heaven's Feel and the end of Gurren Lagann, where it's just two people beat the shit out of each other.
Every single good anime knows that eventually you have to have them drop their weapons, cut the bullshit, no more superpowers. It is just a slug match.
Just beat the shit out of each other like they deserve and get it all out of your system, right?
This is a scene that does not fundamentally change no matter what character kind you are playing, which means that you can be playing a Lalafell White Mage for this encounter, as one of my friends did, and you have this slobber knocker slugfest, and it creates a very funny image that I think...
I just want to see...
My understanding is that it's also the canon experience for most of the people who make FF14, because I know a lot of those bitches be playing Lalafells.
I just want to know what the smallest Lalafell looks like trying to leap up to Xenos' chin.
Just a little guy.
I have to stress, Xenos is between, at rough estimate, like between 7'3" and 7'6".
That's correct.
the smallest Lalafell is less than 3 feet tall.
It's gotta.
Literally comes up to his knee.
It's just gotta be episode 2 Yoda, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, that's actually what it looks like. It's the best cutscene in the
It's
world.
great. It's
Yeah.
great.
And you have the slobber knocker, and you both, like, you know, lay each other out on the floor, basically, like what happens in any good anime where two people fight each other, where you're just laying both on the floor, panting. There's some homoerotic tension, because that's what all those scenes are. And Xenos is just like, fuck, you beat me. And you're like, really? Because I'm pretty sure I'm dying. And Xenos is like, yeah, but I'm gonna die first, so I think you won. It was it good for you too?
That's great. It actually is a great scene. He's like, did you have? Because actually, it's kind of a parallel to a scene we didn't talk about, because it's such a small scene, but it's such an important scene. Where at one point, before you go to Katis's Hyperborea, Vina and you are talking alone, and Vina asks you like, "Hey, I know I've put a lot on you, and I know that like my future self has like given you a lot of responsibility, and I'm sure that's really hard and stressful, and you're here under extremely stressful circumstances, but like, did you have fun? Did you have a good time? Has this been fun for you?" And the it does a really good thing where like before you could answer, like Endwalker and Shadowbringers are a lot about kind of quietly characterizing. No matter how you characterize your Warrior of Light, there's also some kind of background characterization that's always happening. That can apply to kind of any type of character you're playing, right? And there's this really great shot where they're about to answer, and you get interrupted, and so it's kind of like the game is asking you, like, "Hey, did you have a good time? Has it been fun for you?" And at the very end of all of it, oh, go ahead.
I was like, instead of asking you to think on that decision right there, it's like, no, I just want you to know that I want to ask that question.
Right, yeah. And at the very end of all of it, Final Fantasy XIV asks one more time, like, "Hey, did you have fun? Did you have a good time?"
It reminds me of two things that get to me now. One is the fact in Nier Automata Ending E, one of the questions the game asks you is, do you think games are silly little things?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is that this exact thing happens in the Adventure Zone, where Griffin's dad, at the very start of the campaign, Griffin complains that he's going to be the DM, so he's not going to have fun. And then, like 3 years later, Clint uses one of his character's questions to abilities to ask the DM one question, and he asks, "Did you have fun running the campaign?"
Oh, no. I forgot about that. That's good.
It's cute, yeah. And
that's dad brain at work, where Griffin says that, and he's like, "I'm filing that one away for
hanging on that one
for now."
Yeah,
I'm gonna lord that over him.
Yeah, and it's the game asking that question, like, "Hey, did you have fun?" And hopefully the answer is yes. I mean, I did. Oh my god! At the end of Final Fantasy 14 is, for the most part, quite fun.
I can't imagine being the person who has played this far into FF14 and been like, "No,
this was bad. I hated it."
I guess if you're a black mage having to fight Xenos at the end of Endwalker, you might be like, "Oh, this sucked ass." Actually,
you're just like laying there, like, "Well, Xenos, I regret every decision I've ever made."
Xenos is like, "You know what? That's fair."
And you're both lying there, and like you see him like stop breathing, and you're lying there. It's like, I guess I'm on the way out, because like I already used the button to send everyone else back, and it's just me at the end of the world, and like I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is it. I'm going to die here. And from nowhere, the little red button, the one that you cast away that should have not be here, the one that you sent your friends back to safety with, falls on you and sends you back to the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And you wake up. So I believe several days later, because you were very nearly for real dead.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You wake up, like, Kryle's just, like, shaking by his shoulders, like, "Wake up, Warrior of Light, you fucked up big time." Warrior of Light's just like, "Kryle." And like,
Kryle.
"What happened to me?" And she's like, "Well, every single bone in your body got turned to dust, and also all of your organs were bruised. So, like, it took a little bit of doing to get you back into ship shape, man."
Kryle holds up an organ, is like, "We didn't know where this one went, but you seem to be fine without it."
Yeah,
Oh,
we
no.
figured, like, if there's any problems, we'll just shove it back in somewhere. But, I don't want to make anything worse, so we're just going to leave it out. And you're like, I'm pretty sure it's my heart. And she's like, I don't know. I mean, you're there, aren't you?
It did fall out of you, but we'll just keep it on tap just in case.
Well, I'll admit, I actually put a different heart that I happen to have handy in there. And by the time I realized I fucked up, I had already stitched everything together. And just like, I think we'll just see how it goes. And so you're like, well, I guess we fucking did it, boys. What's going on? What are we gonna do? And you like have your epilogue where you talk to the Scions about what it is they're gonna do now, because like you've done the biggest thing you could possibly do as the Scions, and you're like, well, we kind of collectively agree that we kind of have to shutter this whole Scions business.
Yeah.
Because nothing is ever going to add up to that, and we don't want to be fucking bothered. But we can like keep in touch or whatever. And there's a lot of like, characters talking about where they're planning to go, what they're planning to do. Estinian has a very funny dialogue where he's like, and we're like, what are you planning to do with Estinian? He's like, well, I got a job offer from Emmerich. He wants me to come be a city guard. And I'm like, but I mean, come on, it's me. I'm not going to go be a fucking city guard. Are you kidding me? And they're like, so you're still unemployed, Estinian? And he's like, shut up.
Yeah.
But most importantly here, and this is tying back to the last scene, one of the most important reveals, I believe we get this from talking to Urianger, but like you talk a bit about the button that fell and sent you back. It's like, yeah, we have no idea what could have possibly done that, except for like, maybe the power of Dynamis or something. And you get this wonderful bit of poetry, right? Where the first time you met Xenos and he beat you, but you were still trying to fight him, he commanded you to live for him, for his entertainment, to survive and become something better so he can continue to fight you. And you have the whole thing leading into and with how Heidelin originally gave you the Echo, where she's like, hear, feel, think, and how you got to Ultima Thule and Thancred was like survive. And you realize, and through power of implication alone, and I think this is one of the coolest things in the fucking video game, that with the love in his heart and the last bit of life available to him, that Xenos Viator Galvus used his sincerely heartfelt Kokoro wish to wish that you live for him, because you are the only thing in this world that matters to him, and with the power of Dynamis made the button come back to you, so that you could go live on.
We get another... Urianger is the first one who makes the conjecture, but if you go back to Ultima Thule and speak to a couple of the Omicrons, they do mention that there was a distress signal that they got out right as you were finishing fighting off the Endsinger, and there was a big clash that they saw far off in the distance, and it looked like stars were burning and exploding, which implies that must have been what you were fighting. And then as soon as it ended, they got a single signal that said survive and live. So...
And so Xenos used the power of his love for you to make sure that you lived on, which is like, again, we talk a bit about the communal boyfriends in this and the communal husbands with like Haurchefant and all of them. Like, the writing around Xenos is so like completely just unambiguously romantic in a way that makes me surprised the game does him as dirty as it does over and over again.
Yeah.
Please look forward to the Patreon episode that's coming out in a couple days after this one, where Saturn, Oats, and I are going to get on a phone call and bitch for probably too long.
4 hours. I'm calling it now. It's gonna be
4 hours about how dirty Final Fantasy XIV does Xenos Viator Galvus. Please look forward to that.
Yes, as you have heard us discuss before, sometimes it's hard to tell what FF14's opinion on something is. We're going to get into that with Xenos because it is, boy howdy, just one of the most boggling cases of like,
if
no one knows what's going on upstairs, up there.
If you've listened to these 2 episodes and gone like, man, Sara and Oats sure like to talk a lot on Twitter about how much they like Xenos, and they haven't talked about it a lot in these 2 episodes. There's a reason for that.
They're saving their gas.
Now I'm gonna say, I don't believe them. I think Xenos is gonna be. I think like someone tweeted, he's gonna fucking wash up on the island like Gulliver in Animal Crossing.
It is a thing
God,
where And again, this is the reason why no one believes them either, because they've completely royally fucked themselves on this forever.
They've done this before too.
Because,
They also
again,
said
like,
that Gaius was dead.
At the end of like that also, yes, obviously. But at the end of Stormblood, he fucking cuts his own throat open and manages to find a way to come back to life. And they're like, no, he's dead because he like cut his throat open. You saw it. And this one, they're like, well, you should know he's dead. You saw him breathing. Also, he's at the end of the universe, so he couldn't possibly come back because he sent you back with his power, and Heidelin's power can't bring him back. Because by the way, when he ate her to use her as fuel to turn into a dragon and shoot across the universe, he also burned away her soul. So she is also like not going to heaven either, which is really fucked up.
Extremely dire.
It's so bad.
But we're still gonna bitch about it for 2.5 hours in a bonus podcast. So patreon.com/thegorge.
Yeah, anyway, and so we'll leave that on the table for all that. But yeah, and so you talk with them and you like agree, like, yeah, we're gonna shut down the Scions and everything's gonna go away, and you get Alphino writing a letter to his mom about like all the cool shit they did. Like, hey mom, by the way, I know I just saw you like a day ago. But I decided I'm going to chronicle all of our shit like at the end of Heavensward. And I think technically that is where 6.0 ends.
Yes.
Effectively.
That is where 6.0 ends, yes. So we're not going to talk about 6.1 because that's a whole different can of worms.
Stuff's ongoing. We've like alluded to some bits of it there, like seeing Omega again and yada yada yada. But it's like, importantly, and what I'll say is the departure for 6.1 just as a whole is that it is about like just going, you know what? You've been through a couple years of being insanely depressed. Why don't you just go on a treasure hunt?
Yeah.
We'll hang out.
We're gonna
why don't we go fight some robots and find a holy grail or two? And you're like, yeah.
You know what we're gonna do now? We're gonna go rescue a dragon, and we're gonna fight a big guy in evil armor who cackles maniacally and sits in a throne.
That's correct.
And also, we're gonna go grab Hildebrand because we've been leaving him alone for about 4 years.
We're gonna
go do some cool alliance raids against the 12. Sure.
We're gonna do the fucking funniest concept for Hildebrand ever. That dude is gonna meet some bunnies.
Yeah.
I'm so pumped.
I'm so excited.
He's gonna get to go to the moon twice.
So yeah,
he's been to both moons.
That's Endwalker.
So the question is, now that we're here after almost 3 hours of talking about Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker,
and between us, thousands of hours of playing Final Fantasy XIV in the last 6 months.
So the question is, did you have fun?
Yeah, mostly. I mean, there was some parts where I was very explicitly not having fun.
Yeah, I know.
And didn't want to do this anymore. And I still have a lot of weird mixed feelings. I am skipping a lot of cutscenes in Praetorium because I don't like being in Elpis.
Oh, in Pandemonium. Yeah,
Pandemonium, not Praetorium. Pandemonium. I wish I could skip cutscenes in Praetorium, but I can't.
I know.
Everyone wishes they could. They didn't add it.
Yeah, I'm like kind of mashing through Pandemonium a lot because I don't like talking to Ascians and Elpis.
I had fun. I'm here.
Yeah.
And I voluntarily came for a 2-parter podcast that's going to end up being like something like fucking 5-6 hours when all's said and done. Like, and I barely even scratched the surface of my... Actually, it's going to be like fucking 8 if we include Endwalker or include Shadowbringers. It's like barely even scratching the surface of all my experiences of the game and what I think about it. Just because like it's... Despite itself, and like... I've said this before about other games. I've said about Fate Go, about Destiny 2 and whatever, but I will reiterate it here. There is nothing I love more than a game that comes out and is fucking terrible. And over the course of years, eventually becomes really good while not throwing away the things that it was when it was terrible. And just having to kind of like come to grips with those. Like, yeah, this is something that we did because we thought it was important and cool. And we're going to commit to it still being real because it was real to the people who played it. But we're going to make it better.
Right.
And FF14 is like the poster child for that because like 1.0 FF14, really bad. They canceled it. A Realm Reborn, also really bad. Less bad, but still really bad. And it's a game that has gradually, over the course of years and years, become a game with really good writing and really fun gameplay that it wasn't for a real long time. And it's just, it's, even though I wasn't here for the whole trip, it's still really impressive and to me that it ended up here. And I love a good 10 out of 10, 7 out of 10.
That's right. Oats, how about you?
I think asking this question has immediately caused me to relapse back into how I was when Endwalker was first finished on like December 11th for me, which is to say, I'm good through like tears.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, absolutely.
I spent years on this, and I've always kind of wished like that I could have been there for ground zero for it, but having gone in when I did and spending the time that I have on it, I wouldn't trade for anything else, because seeing it change and evolve and become this wonderful thing that everybody else is kind of recognizing, oh yes, it has become a wonderful game. It never was a wonderful game. It has become something.
Sure.
Like years and years of experience of changes, of like keeping some of the little things. It's like cracking open like a 12-year-old wine and getting to taste it. And remembering like, this is great. I'm never actually going to get to experience this again though. Because once this barrel is done, that's it. There's no more.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm melancholy about it.
I don't think I actually mentioned this, but I think technically I might have, in terms of timestamps, the longest pedigree on this game. Because even though I didn't start seriously playing it and actually going through it all until like November of 2019 or October therein, I did actually play A Realm Reborn at launch and had an account and like played that for a little while.
Oh,
cool.
I don't have, it's not the same account as I use now. I actually made a separate account because like I couldn't be bothered to go back and dig all that old shit up.
Oh yeah.
But like, even with how little I played of it then, it's still like, when I came to it in Shadowbringers, where a lot of the great Endwalker improvements that like, Ben and Sara got to see that weren't in there until fucking Endwalker came out.
Yeah.
Like even in Shadowbringers, still it's like, oh fuck, this is so much better of a game than I last played. And like Shadowbringers was still the one where you had an optimal range for your bard auto attacks, where if you were too far away, you did shit damage. That game was fucking insane.
Yeah.
I love hearing horror stories from you guys about how this game used to be. And Sarah and I are both just like, why was it like that in the first place?
Why'd you make it that way?
And I need you to understand, that was in Shadowbringers. That was recent. That was a historically recent atrocity.
Yeah.
There is not really a great way to communicate how much this game has gone through in order to become good.
I love every now and then just kind of dropping horror stories about what Monk used to be like in Shadowbringers.
Oh.
No,
yeah,
recently.
I still remember being told that like the way Enmity used to be, you had to turn your tank stance on and off. And I'm like, why did anybody play this video game?
Yeah.
Monk used to be, you had to do crazy flip-flop positionals for your entire combo. Remember which positional went with every move. And you had to do all this technically complicated bullshit to still have the worst DPS out of any melee character in the game. It's fucking
best.
Wretched.
It's the best.
Oh no!
How did anyone play this game to keep it going this long?
Truly, the question of did you have fun for me is that like, yeah, I did, despite how Final Fantasy XIV began.
And we played what was basically, people nowadays are playing the good version of A Realm Reborn.
Yeah.
You and I played the good version of A Realm Reborn, where all the classes were actually decent.
Also, again, where a clean 30% of that story that they went, oh, this is useless, just got taken out.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's incredible to me.
And we're still like, Realm Reborn is not very good in comparison. And I'm always going to caveat this with in comparison. It's the DMC 1 to DMC 3 problem.
Absolutely.
You cannot go from 3 to 1.
Final Fantasy XIV, like a Realm Reborn, even like the improved version, like before they made the dungeons like not horrible, it is like an inoffensive 5 out of 10.
Yeah.
Like it's really boring, but it's not like it's boring and stupid in the way that fucking everything is. It's not uniquely bad. It's just sort of like, whatever, and there's a video game that you can play. It's now like a clean 6 because they made the dungeons and MSQ roulette better.
It is just hindsight as to why it's bad.
But it is also still like, it is the 6 of 10 DLC, or the 6 of 10 like content stretch in the game that goes 10 of 10, 7.5, 11 out of 10, 9.5 to 10 out of 10 again.
Correct.
It's weird. It's weird to think how far this has come, and like every time you brush against the why are the hard mode dungeons in A Realm Reborn so insane? And it's like, well, because there was like 3 years of content between A Realm Reborn and Heaven's Word, and they had to think of something to make you waste your fucking time.
Right, to keep people still playing. And still, after all of that, even after like going through A Realm Reborn and having to tolerate that, and it was much, for one, it is much easier with friends who are carrying you through bullshit. Thank you, Saturn and Oats, for just walking around and killing dog shit enemies that otherwise would have turned this into a slog, right? Mm-hmm. Even with all of that, you come out the other end, and like, yeah, it's good. It's fun. The whole thing, you come out of all of it, like all of the pain and frustration of being really bad, especially because like I don't play. I've said it 100,000 times on this podcast before. I don't play multiplayer games. I don't play video games with other people. For most of my life, video games were meant to be a solitary experience that I just did for myself, for fun, with no interaction from other people, right? Mm-hmm.
If this was a video format, this is where you'd see the cover art of Fallout 4.
That's correct.
Slowly superimposing over.
Slowly fading in 2,500 hours in Fallout 4, and that was what video games were to me. It was not a thing that you played with other people, and that's just how it always was. And it's like, I don't know, to go in and actually play an MMO for the first time in my life, and to like go through the kind of demoralizing feeling of being really bad at this video game in the beginning, and like still being like, no, I want to play this game with my friends. I want to get better at it, and I want to keep playing and like learn how to do this right, and do harder content and do more dungeons and keep doing more and more advanced things, is like, I don't know. It is for me a totally unique experience. Like, I don't think it's anything anybody like on anybody else on this pod, because you guys played other multiplayer games before, and I can thoroughly say that this is the only multiplayer game I have ever put a significant amount of time in. I could not. I played a little bit of Halo 2 multiplayer and Halo 3 multiplayer growing up, and that was literally it.
Like even though I've never been a big conventional MMOs person, which is why like for me FF14 is really hard to get into, but like I still have my own like 3,000 hours of Destiny 2,
right?
And being someone who does Destiny 2 raids with friends to fall back on, which is why every time we go to a new activity and it's like, oh Saturn, you just dodged that mechanic without knowing it. I'm like, well, yeah, because I have like 3,000 hours of experience in a different multiplayer game, and I understand how this shit works. I'm really used to it by now.
Yeah, I don't have any of that. I don't have any of the back knowledge of MMO socialization shit. And like, I have come out of this thoroughly convinced this is the best Final Fantasy game ever made.
Yeah, for sure.
It is, I think, the only numbered one I have actually played by myself to completion.
I have played most of them to completion, and I can say without hesitation that this is the best Final Fantasy. Granted, it has the benefit of having been a long-running game versus a single contained experience in one video game. Any one of, Shadowbringers and Endwalker on their own would be the best Final Fantasy game, is what I'm saying, right? Like, Shadowbringers is a Final Fantasy game on its own, and it's the best one. And there are other video games in this video game that are also contenders for the best Final Fantasy. And they're all the same Final Fantasy. And yeah, it's really stunning to me to come out of it and like come out the other end of this, of now pushing almost 1,000 hours in this game since I started it back in January, which we're not going to talk about. And like come out the other side and be like, oh yeah, I get it now. I get why people play video games for socialization, which is probably the biggest revelation that came out of Final Fantasy XIV for me. Like alongside like, hey, this is a Final Fantasy game about like existential horror and the Fermi paradox and grief and loneliness and fucked up politics and all that kind of fun stuff. And the thing I took away from it even more so than all of that is that like, oh yeah, there is a reason people play multiplayer video games to socialize and hang out with your friends in a video game, which is weird. I know.
Yeah, it's the unique strength of FF14, like even more so than FF11, where it's like, yeah, Shadowbringers and Endwalker are very good and to a certain degree like would be good standalone RPGs, except that the way they're made and the stuff that they talk about and the characters that they have specifically need that extra context, right? Where like, if you want to be like a freak about it, even though it's like, oh yeah, Endwalker is a sequel to Shadowbringers and Shadowbringers is an original DLC, Shadowbringers is a sequel to the Crystal Tower raids from A Realm Reborn. And like, part of this isn't just like to be, it's not just to be pedantic, but it's also like, this is the benefit of this being, a long-running game, is that you have this extremely long development time to build on these ideas and make this thing that's like this 400-hour RPG, and you can do it in a slow enough burn and in this social way where all these people can get invested in it in like a really profound and social way that makes it like, it makes it hit more than if it was just like a thing you were binging through in a week. You know what I mean? And it's like you, to a certain extent, you literally could not do. Like, you could maybe do Shadowbringers as like a standalone RPG if you just like fuck with some of the plot stuff and make it a little different. Endwalker, you could not make as anything except the final expansion of like a...
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Like, and it's like a beautiful thing too, because like a lot of long running stuff, like even Destiny 2, it's like it has lots of cool stuff in it, but it is still just like, this is something you could deliver in a regular video game that you were instead doing as part of a live service game, right? Like you could frame this in a way where it would just work in a single player game. Endwalker cannot possibly work unless it is in an MMO. And like, I have not really seen a lot of other video games, especially in like the live service thing, attempt to do that, really.
Yeah, it's very much just like the backbone of Endwalker is that this is a social experiment or a social experience of something you do with your friends, something that you do with like the people in this game with you. The Heidelin trial is something you can do as a trust, and that's cool. That's how I actually did it the first time. But it's very important for what Endwalker and Shadowbringers and like all of Final Fantasy XIV is about, is that you do the very last trial of the game with randos or with your friends, with like people you know, or from just like, pubs, right? And like, that's important too, because part of like what Endwalker is about is that like, yeah, this is all coming to an end. This long 10-year long story is finally wrapping itself up, but you still have shit to do. And more importantly, you still have shit to do with the people you know, right? And that's the fun of it, is going out and getting to do like 6.1 content, especially for like me, getting to do 6.1 content that is fresh with my friends.
Yeah,
right?
We're all like, when the patch comes out tomorrow and we get more content, no one knows what it's gonna be.
Yeah. Like
When
when
you-
6.2 drops and we have new fucking pandemonium raids, the fun is doing it with people you know, and it's an adventure all on its own, right?
Emmett Selk's just like, you can't die yet. You and your homies have to go explore Australia and also like raise several million gil together so that one of you can have a robot cat.
Yeah.
You got stuff to do. Don't worry about it. The game is
Yeah.
not going anywhere.
Like,
It might change. We've closed the
story
door
is
on,
over.
yeah, we've closed the door on so many plot lines now. This is what I want. I've said this before. This is what I want with every RPG or with a game like 13 Sentinels, where it's just like, I want, after you beat the final boss, there should always be one more dungeon. And
Right.
it's just your victory lap, epilogue dungeon of go dick around and have one final quest for treasure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like we've said, like Endwalker is a game where it's like they finally realized, hey, the best part of FF14 is that there's cool guys that you do stuff with and they're funny and you like them because
Yeah.
they're your friends and you've been doing shit with them for, if not years, at least at this point, several hundred hours.
Literally, there is no, having done it personally, there is no way you could burn through all of Final Fantasy XIV in 2 weeks. It's literally physically impossible. Unless you literally can't do it. Sorry. Just by if you want to do Final Fantasy XIV right, if you want to go into the end of Endwalker, having done like the ideal amount of content to get the most context out of the entire story, which I have done. I did every raid series, and I did all of the Alliance raids, and I did all of the weapon trials. While I didn't finish the Four Lords, but those don't count. But I did everything to go into the end of Endwalker with the right amount of context so that the emotional plot beats would hit the way they're supposed to hit. You know what? It took me 3.5 months.
Yeah,
It is physically impossible to burn through all of Endwalker or through all of Final Fantasy XIV, so that, and that's by design. Like,
yeah. If you were hooked up to a machine and you played FF14 24 hours a day and like could still do it perfectly the entire time, whatever, you could maybe do that in a month. Maybe. However,
even then you gotta contend with queue times, and that's something outside of your control, even if you're hooked up to a machine.
even for the most depressed and unemployed of us, like me, when I played through Shadowbringers, like I got through the end of Shadowbringers and did basically everything in the same way through the end of Shadowbringers in about, I want to say 45 days, which again was fast. But this was at a point in my life where I literally had the ability to play Final Fantasy XIV for 12 hours a day and did.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's just not what. And you know what? Not a great way to experience FF14, frankly, because I forget tons of shit.
Yeah. Yeah. So as it turns out, Final Fantasy XIV is unbingeable, I suppose is the way to call it, and is meant to be played over a long period of time with your friends, so that when you're finally done with Endwalker, 3.5 months later, you can go and you can do 6.1 the day it drops, and you take a day off of work.
As you do.
As you do, to go do the fucking dungeons with your friends. And it's like, oh, right. Even though I am sad that this whole overarching plot that I didn't put 10 years into it. I didn't even put 4 years into it. I put, like I said, 3.5 months. Even though I'm sad that that is over, it's like, oh yeah, that's like why I'm playing this game. But after a certain point, also not why I'm playing this game.
Yeah.
Like, I want more plot content to keep coming out and stuff, obviously. But like, just dicking around in Alliance raids with my friends is honestly more fun.
True Final Fantasy XIV was the best real. You're crying.
that limit break that you were fighting over as two samurai was literally the friends you made along the way.
Look,
Yeah.
we joke a lot about it. I genuinely love getting Praetorium in the roulette. And
As long as I'm on a phone call with people I know. Otherwise, oh god, kill me.
Getting to just turn my brain off of the gameplay. Like you know when you drive like a really long time on the highway and you just kind of zone out and don't realize where you're going? Like you're not gonna hit anyone.
Sure, because
you're not
paying enough attention.
Yeah, that's how I feel doing Praetorium now.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's great. I love it.
When you look down and see the empty limit break bar, that was the extremely reckless and dopamine deprived ninja who was carrying you with the limit break 1 like 5 minutes into the fight.
Who keeps ruining our run of Asphodelis too. Because they won't stop fucking using the LB1 for some godforsaken reason.
I like when we get
guy
a
listening.
If this sounds like you should close the podcast now. I don't think Ben or Sarah want your audience. You.
I do love the thrill of like when it's my first time doing a boss or a raid or something or a trial, and I'm like, oh man, this is really. I'm like thinking to myself, well, this is really hard. We keep bombing on, and then we drop out, and then eventually we like because everyone's just like, it's not happening. Let's give up.
Oh, vote abandoned. Yeah.
We get to the next one. We clear it first time. It's like, oh no, this wasn't hard. We just had a shitty team.
We just had a bunch of morons.
It keeps happening, and I promise you, Ben, when you get to Eden, it will happen several times. Like, I think we started Eden, but like there are specific fights in Eden where it's like we might have to do that 2 or 3 times because if you get just 1 or 2 people who are completely brain dead, it becomes impossible.
That's correct.
And that was our experience. Like that was our because Sarah and I went through Eden for the first time because like I kind of touched it when I was playing originally and didn't end up picking it up again until Sarah got to it, and we kept having parts like, oh, is this hard? And it's like, no, it's just that our healer is like has never picked up a keyboard before.
has bought a white mage skip ostensibly, and then just showed up to Eden like, hey guys, I guess I'm here to try and heal Ifrit and Gerda. And it's like, no, you're not. Get the fuck out.
I'm glad your mind went to the same one that lives in mine.
Forever. Until I die. Yeah. But the thing is, the most important thing is that, like, I don't know, you come out of Final Fantasy XIV with these stories of like doing shit with your friends like this and
meeting strangers who you hate.
And strangers that you hate. And it becomes funny. It becomes like the fun part of the game is like looking at all of these freaks and hanging out at the gold saucer.
Like,
you know?
We say that like Shadowbringers is like an 11 out of 10. And you know, like Final Fantasy XIV is the best game of all time, and I think that's because it generally is a 10 out of 10 game. But there's also like a solid +5 modifier, just like interacting with it with other people who you enjoy like their company with.
Sure, absolutely. Mm-hmm. I couldn't imagine going through this game by myself.
Yeah, no, I would never. It would have clung to me if I didn't have you guys like, you know, egging me on to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's what it comes out as.
Well, I was saying, this is like kind of mirrored my own experience of the game, where it's like, again, like I went through Shadowbringers originally through 5.3 in like October or November of 2019, right? Or of 2020, one of those two, I forget. 2020 it was. And the thing that I had is I went through it completely by myself, struggled through it by myself, didn't have anyone I was doing it with at all, period, except for just matchmaking. And I got to the end of 5.3, and I'm like, well, that was a really good story. 5.3 is a great place for the story to end. And I don't have anyone to do this with, and after my second month of subscription, I just stopped playing, period.
Sure.
And it is only now that I came back in January of this year to do Endwalker, because I knew Sarah and Ben were going to pick up the game, and I wanted to be there for it, that I have been subscribed for the last 7 months.
Yeah.
Playing it more days than not, most days for the last 7 months, because I am mostly playing it while hanging out with people, and it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. So Oats is right. The real Final Fantasy XIV was the friends we made along the way.
Yeah.
The mic isn't picking it up, but I've been crying this whole time.
And
Yeah.
and it's one of those things where it's like, even if there comes a point where we're like, you know what, well, I think we're collectively done with FF14 or whatever, like nothing's coming out, we're bored, whatever. It's a thing where it's like, well, I would still like to find something to fill that time, because I have come to really appreciate the time that we spend together playing FF14. And I'm sad that we didn't start doing it sooner, because I love just getting on call and shooting the shit with you and meeting the worst idiots I've ever met in my entire life and going, oh, go fuck yourself, I'm putting you on my block list.
All of us is just collectively deciding to block some freak who's bad at the video game because why are you doing that? And it's a bonding moment to go, we're all collectively blocking this asshole.
Every day every day I log in and periodically it'll tell you how many people are in Party Finder trying to look for groups. And every day, because we have banned so many people on our blacklist, I find them and it'll be like, out of the 99 people who are looking for a Party Finder, only 93 meet your criteria.
out of 100 nobles, 99 were impressed.
Yeah, it's great.
It's the way's game of telling you if you were more tolerant, you'd be able to matchmake with those people. To which my response is, why would I ever want to matchmake with that person for anything?
No, I don't want to get stuck in a fucking duty with this asshole again.
It's kind of like the equivalent of like when you block someone on Twitter and like you see it's like, you have this person blocked. Would you like to view their tweet? And you're like, maybe I do want to view their tweet. And you click on it and you go, I didn't want to view their tweet.
Yeah. Why did I have this person? There's a reason I had this idiot blocked.
I was going to say, I actually have the opposite impulse, which is whenever I see that, I'm like, oh, I must have had them blocked for a reason. And then I close the tab. Because I'm like, past me has some bad ideas, I'll admit. It took me approximately 27 years to become the person I am today, and most of that was spent floundering beforehand. However, when it comes to people I have blocked on Twitter, past me had some good ideas.
I wish there was just like, I wish you could just write yourself a note like, you have this person blocked, and here's why. If we could do that in 14, we could be like, here's why you have this person blocked. Badass foe.
You have this person blocked. Do you want to look at your tweets? And then you just press a little question mark button, and then you see like something that is clearly your typing style that just says extremely racist. And you're like, oh, I found out what I need to know.
There you go.
Or you just see something like bad opinions about tuna, and you're just like, what the fuck? How could someone have bad opinions about tuna? And then you find the interaction, like, oh, God.
Bad Xenos opinions.
Yeah.
I'm sure that block list is a mile long.
That's correct.
Sadly, it is.
Oh, God.
Anyway, all this to say, look forward to the Xenos podcast, which I want to right now in this podcast say like it should be called like a test of your reflexes, right?
Yeah, it's totally called a test of your reflexes. Yeah,
because aside from just us griping about like the way the game does Xenos 30, there is also a lot to talk about there about like the way that they apparently write this game, which is to say insanely. And the seeming, like, okay, just as a little teaser of something I want to talk about when we do that episode, and because we brought it up in like one of the prior ones, the apparently insane way they write this game, which is that whoever is responsible for writing a particular patch just decides what happens on it, and other people have to clean up after them later.
Completely insane. It's great. Sometimes
just absolutely no committee work on that whatsoever. It's like, why would you do this?
It's an American comic book. I swear to God.
It's an American comic book, except it's a Japanese JRPG.
It's a long-running MMO, you stupid fucks. Why are you leaving it to chance? This isn't the new Star Wars trilogy.
It's way better than that.
Somehow.
That's not hard. That's not hard.
That's a low bar to clear.
The bar is in hell.
Fortunately, 2 of those are J.J. Abrams movies, and one of them's Rian Johnson doing a very valiant effort, but being stuck in the middle of 2 J.J. Abrams movies.
But the point is, because we kind of got off track, and that's fine.
That's a Gorge.
It's the Gorge. The Gorge goes off track a lot. Even with all my griping about certain writing decisions, again, $2 on patreon.com, look forward to it. Even all of that said, like, I love this game. I love this game. It's a good game. It is a stunningly good game from almost from start to finish. I know that, like, A Realm Reborn is rough, but there is a certain part in A Realm Reborn where the turn happens and you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm on board. I'll pay attention now. And then it just keeps getting better from there, which is what you really want, right? You don't want a show, Game of Thrones, where it starts out really strong and then gets bad at the end, Game of Thrones.
Because the people writing it don't understand what makes it good. Game of Thrones.
You want it to start kind of rough and then just get slowly better over time. And then toward the end, you're like, this was a solid experience from start to finish, actually. And I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I spent going on 1,000 hours now on this video game, and I will probably pour 1,000 more.
It's both the satisfaction of overcoming something unpleasant and the satisfaction of having your faith in something rewarded.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
And to come out the other end and really have played a game that asks questions and does philosophical shit that, other than Nier, I have never seen another game kind of tackle. Final Fantasy XIV is about a lot of really big things. It's about existential horror, and it's about what is out there in the universe, and it's about death, but in a more kind of nuanced way about dealing with death. It's not just about people dying, but it's about being being what's left in the aftermath, and it's about hanging out with your cool friends and breaking up with your boyfriend and killing your depression. And it does all of these really cool and interesting things that I have never seen another game attempt. And it's in an MMO, which is even more bold of them to do, right? To really do some heavy stuff in a game that is being played by millions of people simultaneously, right?
Of big RPGs, you have FF14, you have Nier, and you have Greatest Game of All Time, Disco Elysium.
Correct.
And that's it. The well is pretty shallow on that one, ironically, considering the depth of the subject matter.
There's also second greatest game of all time, Fallout New Vegas.
That's
also
true.
Yeah, and there's a few other games out there that are doing things like that on, Kentucky Route Zero and stuff like that. They're also kind of asking these. But the deal is that, especially in terms of Final Fantasy, the bigness of the Final Fantasy franchise, to be willing to go, listen, this game almost fucking died. Why don't we just do whatever we want? Because people seem to like it when we do, right?
I think part of it is also, it doesn't just bother to ask the question. It also, it uses the question as a lead-in to talk about the philosophy of what they think, of what their thoughts and feelings behind it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It really explores it.
Yeah, it's not just I'm asking the open-ended question and leaving some clues for you. It's, well, I'm asking you the question because I have thoughts about it too. Mm-hmm. And what are your thoughts on it as well, after hearing how we feel about it?
Yeah, I think that's a thing that it's funny to bring this up in this context, but why, Jacob Geller did a video about why Metal Gear Solid Revengeance is still relevant after all of this time, and it's because Metal Gear Solid Revengeance is not just about something, but willing to really boldly say it's about something in a really crazy way, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why New Vegas and Disco Elysium and Nier Automata are also still relevant video games these years and years later. It's because they're we're about something, we're asking you a very interesting question, but also we are going to make a statement about our thoughts on the question, right?
I'm going to pose a hypothesis here, and I'm going to air this hypothesis because I want to be proven wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Or, well, not proven wrong. I will challenge you to prove me wrong. But I think there is a correlation between a video game being willing to just go for it and say something interesting and or do something interesting with the medium and just really stake it all out there on just trying to get like that one, just trying to find some resonance with someone, anyone, and how doomed that game was in development.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have FF14, which goes crazy and was like almost blown off the face of the earth. You have Nier Automata, which is a sequel to Nier.
A game, yeah. Nier Automata is a game that should not exist.
The fact that Nier Automata exists at all is crazy. The fact that it's like the best game of 2017 is like unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
You have it for Disco Elysium, which was made by poor Estonians who very nearly weren't able to make that game. You have Fallout New Vegas, where the last thing Obsidian made before that was fucking Alpha Protocol.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like
When you have nothing to lose.
And you have Revengeance, where that was in development hell at Kojima's studio before also getting pawned off on Platinum when they were just like, fuck it, figure it out. We give up.
Yeah, when you have nothing to lose, you can do whatever you want. You have the freedom to just make whatever kind of product you want because no one's looking at you.
Right, yeah, exactly. You can go crazy, and if people resonate with it, then it'll sell. Until you have the meme on Twitter, please play critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV, now free up to Heavensward, right?
Yeah, I think it because for a little bit of just last digression, recently I played through Cyberpunk 2077. That is a game that does not have a whole lot interesting to say or do. It feels kind of like people just threw a lot of spaghetti at a wall and then eventually said, "Hey, it's spaghetti," while showing you a bunch of cold noodles that were stuck through the wall. And I think there's a significant part there where it's like, the reason Cyberpunk fails is because at a certain point in its development, I feel like every idea that anyone might have had was met with, well, we want millions of people to play this game instead of 5 people.
Right.
And for all these other games, they're like, well, 5 people who are insane about the video game is better than 0 people, so we may as well just hope for the best.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's literally kind of what 14 exists off the back of, right? 14 exists because there were a couple 100,000 insane people who still played 1.0, right? They had no reason to play 1.0. There were literally thousands of better video games out. I mean, I know it was 2010, so it was a rough time for video games, but still,
Not that rough.
But not that rough. And they still, for some godforsaken reason, still played 1.0 until eventually we had a Realm Reborn, right? It's a video game. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's made for a lot of people now, but at the end of the day, Final Fantasy XIV is still for the people who played fucking 1.0, and everybody else is just kind of along for the ride. And that's beautiful. That's what makes it so interesting and so weird and willing to do strange things, is that it's a bunch of the rejects who were just trying to salvage a doomed project, who sat down and were like, how do we not just salvage this doomed project but make it good eventually? And that's literally what 14 is. It's a game made by freaks for freaks, and because of that, it ends up being weird and wonderful and unique, and it's the best Final Fantasy ever.
If you haven't played Final Fantasy XIV, you have not experienced the epic highs and crushing lows of high school football.
It's true.
Oh, God. And we have been here for 3.5 hours. So
yes.
Now is the time to make closing statements, people. If you have any. Otherwise, I'm going to tell Ben to do the ending spiel.
I think the only really big thing I have to say is thank you for everybody who has been patient enough to wait for Sarah and Ben to get to this moment.
Yeah, God love you.
Um,
God love you all. God love every single person on the Discord who
you are the Legacy 1.0 Final Fantasy 14 players of the Gorge.
God bless everybody on the Discord, by the way, who when I got on the Final Fantasy 14 chat at like 11 o'clock at night Central Standard Time, all I posted was the final day is now available. Literally the entire Discord lit up with, okay, we'll be there in just a second. Hold on.
I want to say it was 7 people all told, and like it was only
rando.
It was only not 8 because Ben wasn't there yet.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it.
Literally it. Ben.
That's
I think
it.
Ben at that point was still in Shadowbringers, if I'm not mistaken. But
and that's it. It was literally God bless all of you for literally coming, for helping Ben through Heidelin, because that was also rough.
Mm-hmm.
Like, y'all the real MVPs for harassing me to play this video game, because it paid off. It paid off. If harassing me and Ben to play this video game, it paid off. I love this fucking game.
We love you.
We doing fucks yet?
No, I've got something for that.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Okay. All right. I'll wait.
All right, Ben, do the ending spiel then.
Yeah, that'll do it for us. Thank you to Visitor for use of background music. You can follow me on Twitter at thegorgepodcast. You can follow Sarah at radioinactivity. You can email us at thegorgepodcast@gmail.com. You can listen to Sarah and Saturn's other podcast.
Hey, we're in another podcast called Big Gay Nerds, where me, Saturn, and some other cool queer friends get together and we play tabletop games. We try out different systems all the time. It's a lot of fun. Right now we're kind of cycling between 2 games. We just wrapped up Masks, The New Generations, where you play as young superheroes trying to make your way in the world. And we finally got back to Beam Saber.
Hey, baby, daddy long dick's back in weeping hair. That's a game I run. It's crazy.
It rules. It whips ass. We were gone for a while because we were playing Masks instead. And how would you describe Beam Saber?
I would say also, for what's worth, we were gone for a while because, as is seemingly the case with every long form game I run on the podcast, we had a cast shakeup due to personal circumstances that we had to figure out how to work around. But it happens. But we did that. It was planned this time at least. So hey, whatever. I would describe that one as a Gundam, except by way of being a sequel to Blades in the Dark. So it's like insane magic shit, but also Gundam. There's like animal people, so it's got stuff for furries, I guess, question mark. I will describe it thusly, to quote the Prophet, 50 Cent, this is entertainment for gay men and bitches only.
Correct.
That's why I watch it.
Yeah. And you can find Big Gay Nerds wherever you get your podcasts. Yet again, Saturn, tell us where we can find you.
You can find me at The Future Rules on Twitter, Tumblr, and cohost.org if you happen to be one of the lucky people who's in there. If not, keep an eye on it. It's gonna be a thing. I am sure of it. It's a very cool website, and the people who I am close with were actually the ones who made it, and it's getting some buzz in the spaces. So keep your eyes out. Aside from that, you can expect to hear from me on this podcast again soon. Not just in the form of a Patreon episode where we whine about Xenosia Galvus and the insane treatment of that character and ideas of redemption from the studio that made FF14, but also very soon you can expect to hear me on a Gorge where I will be talking a bit about the acclaimed Japanese visual novel Umineko no Naku Koroni. It will be a spoiler-free review. I really hope you tune in to see how I am going to thread that fucking needle.
I'm looking forward to it, more than you can.
Spoiler-free is my favorite part about that.
Horrifying to consider.
It is a book.
Now,
what can you do?
Now, is this spoiler-free in the sense that you were going to actively dodge spoilers, or in the fact that Umineko is a series like JoJo where spoilers are incomprehensible, so they don't matter anyway?
No, Umineko can extremely be spoiled. Like, you can spoil the actual twist of Umineko from moment one if you're extremely cruel. I'm not going to do that, mostly because A, that sucks, but B, also because Umineko is basically a book, and if I want to encourage you to read it, I'm going to make a podcast where I talk about the things that it made me feel without actually talking about anything that happened in the book. So, with that in mind, I hope you stay tuned for that. That should be sometime in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned.
And Oats, I know that you never have anything to say when I do this, but
What if this time it's different?
what if this time it's different?
Anything can be possible.
Anything is possible, huh?
Yeah.
That's right.
Girl,
Sometimes even the same thing is possible.
Girl, I got nothing. If you want to hang out with me, go to the Gorge's Discord and just add me there.
There's Oats doing the right thing and promoting our Discord. That's right. We play Final Fantasy
I do
14
that
together.
every time.
Yeah. We play Final
sometimes
Fantasy 14 together a lot on the Discord, so there you
run
go.
treasure maps together. Also, we play Fate Go on there and mostly just talk about blowing several hundred Saint Quartz rolling for Castoria.
That's correct.
If you want to hang out with us while we play our multifarious Brainworms games, please come do that. I would love to meet you and say hi and all that other jazz.
Okay. After almost 4 hours, 3 hours and 38 minutes, that'll do it for us.
Yep.
If you listen to this episode 200 times in a row, you will about equal out the amount of gameplay hours it would take you to go from A Realm Reborn through the end of Endwalker while doing all the major content.
Great.
All right.
This is where we say fuck something. So Ben, do it.
So I don't actually have anything.
Oh.
What I do have is thank you.
Aw, Ben!
Aww.
Because this is, after 6 years of doing this podcast, this is episode 200
Oh my god, you're right.
of
That's
the
right.
podcast.
Oh my god, it's been here for almost 6 years.
If you listen to episode 200 times in a row and play it backwards so you hear the satanic messages we've laced into this recording.
So I wanted to say thank you to Oats and Saturn for popping in every so often. I wanted to say thank you to everyone who has been listening to us. I know some people have been listening to us since the beginning. When
Which is insane.
we were stuck on SoundCloud, and we didn't even have a Twitter account or a Discord or anything.
Or a real microphone in my case, and I was still using my laptop microphone and sounded like dog shit.
And I also wanted to say thank you to Sara for doing this whole thing with me for over 6 goddamn years.
I know.
Starting off weekly, and then every other week, and then every so often, and then 3 times a month, and then just whenever the fuck we can get episodes out.
You know,
And-
people seem to like our insane schedule changes, so it's fine. It's cool.
Having a consistent schedule is frankly overrated. I only listen to podcasts like every couple weeks anyway, so it makes no difference to me.
That's right.
And thank you for doing all the Patreon content and for helping me with title cards and episode names and picking topics and
I didn't think I was going to get thanked this much at the end of this episode.
all this fucking shit that we do, and there's tons of more stuff to do.
It's fine, thank you, because this podcast literally exists, for the record, on the force of Ben's will, more so than my own, because I'm a lazy piece of shit and like a weird freak artist who just kind of does things when she wants to do it. But Ben is the one who's like, hey, when are we doing this thing? And I'm like, I guess we're doing it on Monday. And he's like, you're goddamn right we are. And he does all the editing, even though he never edits out when I yell at my dogs. I think it's a charm point at this point, so it's fine.
It is.
It is.
Fine. Everyone likes to hear your dogs.
And if you want to write in to complain about it, consider doing something better with your life.
Or follow us on Twitter. If you want to follow us on Twitter, just talk shit about us, that's fine. I'm really mean on Twitter, so I don't mind.
Yeah, well, I'll block you. It's fine.
I'll block you, and I'll call you a fucking moron on Twitter. If you've been listening for this long for some reason and you still want to be mean to me, I don't know. Maybe there are people out there. Remember that one freak who was an Elon Musk fan and still listened to us for some reason?
Yeah, that was weird.
Sorry if it's you. I wish you all the luck in overcoming your incredible personal problem.
Yeah.
I did want to extend that and say thank you to Ben and Sarah for doing this, for having me on, for having Oats on. Thank you, Oats, for coming and doing this with me, so I don't feel like the only insane outsider here. And I did want to ruin this heartfelt moment and say fuck you to everyone on my social block list. If I had a genie wish, I would use it to make you permanently banned from FF14. So count your blessings, you fucking ingrates.
Perfect.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.